gracious, everybody, if it isn't episode 201 of the Warhammer podcast that goes around calling itself Look Out Sir 40k. That's right, love a bit of that. Hello, my name's Dad. It's my pleasure to introduce you to this podcast and to introduce you to, assuming you've not met him before, many of you won't have, but, you know, you feel like you will have done because you will have listened to us and build an affection and affinity for our lovely voices. Isn't that right, Phil? It's Phil, everybody.
Hello, everyone. I guess a few things to note. Are we actually still? Are we not dropping the 40k bit? Hasn't that gone with the wins?
It has, but we haven't really sorted it out properly. So, like, if you go onto like our YouTube, I think we're still called Look Out Sir 40k.
Yeah, so,
it's very inconsistent.
So here's the thing, Dan. As far as I'm concerned, the actual podcast is just called Look Out Sir. However, for URLs and stuff, we've had to go Look Out Sir 40k. Purely because I think Look Out Sir on its own was already taken, or for whatever reason it was at the time. So,
fair. Well, there you go. We've probably carved out our niche in that space now, though. I suppose we have earned our spot as the, holders of the name. Look Out Sir.
Exactly. And yeah, so we're on a
sixth. Well,
oh no, go on.
No, please.
Oh, well, I was going to say, we're at 201, which is the start of the grind to 400, as many of our listeners have mentioned already.
Absolutely. On our way to 400, although we'll focus on 300 for now. That seems like a perfectly reasonable
I think so.
milestone, doesn't it? Yeah, absolutely. Odds are we'll be dead before we get to 400.
Yes, or we're doing Napoleonics by then.
Quite possibly. At the very least, we will probably be leaning more into bolt action and some other bits and pieces. But for now, we're keeping it Warhammer, a little bit of Age of Sigmar, quite a lot of 40k, because, that's just the flavour of the times. A good amount of Old World, and, all of those things. Because what are we talking about this time?
Well, this episode, we're talking about all of those things, because it is the AdeptiCon reveal show. So, unfortunately, everyone, Krieg got bumped another week. Sorry.
It's because they're not really the Krieg anymore, they're the Astra Militarum. Who even cares about them, eh?
Exactly. Those pretenders to the throne that don't even have a planet of their own.
That's it. It's all silly nonsense at this point. Much like a 5-star review.
Hang on a second, what is this? Some kind of review? A 5-star review? Well, let's get into the nitty-gritty of this Warhammer 5-star review.
On this occasion, Phil, episode 201. Where have I taken the 5-star review
I
from?
think you might have gone for somewhere quite exotic, because I feel like last episode you said we had a bit of a backlog for them. So I'm going Apple Podcasts of Sweden.
Ooh, if I had remembered that, I would have gone there.
Next week.
Unfortunately, I had forgotten. Yeah, well, weirdly in my head, I was like, I feel like there was a backlog in Germany. And then I looked at Germany and was like, there isn't. I'll just go to the UK. I can't go wrong with the UK. We do well, Phil, in the Britain/United Kingdom.
I'd hope so.
It being
our home country.
Yeah, exactly. The place where we reside. This episode's 5-star review comes by the way of Apple Podcasts of the United Kingdom and has been granted to us by a lovely individual. We can only assume. Obviously, they left us a 5-star review, so we have to assert their quality as a person. And it is none other than R.F.Celestino. So there we go. R.F.Celestino has left us a 5-star review. And the title of the 5-star review is Best 40k Podcast 5 stars, which is, of course, Philip, a prerequisite of appearing here in the 5-star review segment. And if you would like to leave us a 5-star review, not you, Phil, but obviously if you'd like to, obviously feel free. Although, that would be seen probably negatively by our detractors, us padding our numbers. It's bad enough that we do this segment, let alone start mucking around doing our own reviews.
I feel like I probably did our second review, like, very early doors. I got in there quick.
It's probably for the best that you don't admit that out loud, but I will at least say that I have definitely ticked us 5 stars on Spotify. Oh. That is something I have done. I am one of the many hundreds of people that have said 5 stars. Although, admittedly, we are now a 4.9 out of 5 on the Spotify.
How dare they?
That's a sign of being popular, Phil. You see, you've always got to have your detractors. You know, that's how it is. You can't please
just
everybody.
Some jealous rivals that have got their own podcast, probably.
Absolutely. I like the idea of someone fuming with hatred towards us, like listening to this in a kind of, oh God, someone's calling me on the phone, Phil. See, it's this lack of professionalism. It is my Nando's, actually, yeah. But we'll go deal with that in a second. We'll go get my Deliveroo Nando's in a moment. First, Phil, we got this 5-star review to talk about, or more specifically, promotion of people giving us more 5-star reviews. So do that. And if you haven't, do. If you've done it, great. Love you. Much like, obviously, R.F.Celestino. Good work. So, yeah, get on board with that. What else, Phil?
Well, you've got our Patreon that you can subscribe to, of which we have done 3, I don't want to say new things, but there are 3 things on there. There was Dan doing a phone call from his Nando's man. There was Dan doing a list review of someone's list back in 8th edition that we did on our YouTubes that we've just put up there. We did a Dan and Joe very old bat rep. Again, we put that up there for our patrons to watch. And I feel like there was one other thing, but I can't remember what it was.
Sorry, I was on mute. God, this is so unprofessional. Of the 3 things that we normally talk about, Phil, it's usually 5-star review, Patreon, and then
the 3 videos that we put up on Patreon.
Oh God, sorry, I was distracted telling the Nando's people that I was dealing with stuff. Fine, yes, so we did. This is all gone terribly wrong. Tell them about the merch, Phil, and we'll move on.
You can buy some merch online. Okay, quick 5-star review. Dan's got a week. Quick.
No. It'll be fine. It'll be fine. I can get to it. It's fine. It was actually my darling wife calling me to say that it's there, right. But she obviously didn't take the hint when I hung up on them. I mean, what is the deal with these people trying to be helpful? Unbelievable. Anyway, yes, blah, 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 blah. Our detractors don't like us. We've got stuff on Patreon, and there is merchandise as well. Well, isn't that grand? Yes, good. Anyway, getting back to this lovely 5-star review that has been given to us by R.F.Celestino. Celestino? We're going with it. Best 40k podcast, 5 stars. Absolutely brilliant. There you go. What a review. Short, succinct, the exact sort of review that you love to hear when there is a Nando's waiting in the wings for you. Unless, of course, obviously you're someone who doesn't enjoy Nando's for whatever reason. Vegetarian, presumably. Although I imagine they have a perfectly serviceable vegetarian.
They do. One of my friends is vegetarian, and he highly rates it as a meal.
There we go. Nando's, please sponsor us. Anyway, yes, Phil. Or rather, yes, R.F.Celestino. Thank you so much for your 5-star review. It was short, succinct, and lovely. Really appreciate it. Really appreciate you. Thank you so much. I'm terribly sorry that this is probably one of the most unprofessional and poorly recorded 5-star review segments we've done in a while. But whatever. Hopefully you enjoyed it. You're wonderful. And someone else who's wonderful.
R.F.Celestino, thank you very much for your kind, short and sweet words. I'm going to pad this out for as long as possible so Dan's food goes cold and he starves to death while doing this podcast. I've
got plenty of storage still, Phil. You know me. There's a lot of me to eat away at before the starvation sets in.
That is true. You could be like those people up in the North Pole on that old ship that got stuck there and got eaten by polar bears in that TV show adaptation in the Arctic.
What you mean the old timey wimey? It wasn't called The Grey. That was a film where a man was being attacked by wolves.
That was.
And he basically glassed them at the end, didn't he? He put like miniatures.
Yes, that was Liam Neeson doing that. Yeah, that's not the one I was.
Always get confused, and I always say Liam Nielsen or whatever. Basically, the Naked Gun guy. I always get confused.
Oh, him. Right. Yes. Okay.
Yeah, Leonard Nimoy. Anyway, it doesn't matter. Yes.
Yes, you've got a way to go. Obviously this is a horrendous episode start. So we do apologise for that very deeply. But it's not like we haven't had 200 episodes worth of experience under our belts to be a bit better at this. So we can only.
Well, look. For as bad as it was, Phil, we still got it in one take. That's all you got. That's all that matters. Whether it was good or bad, it was efficient.
For your editing purposes, yes.
Absolutely. That's all, mate, and that is all that matters at the end of the day. That is all that matters. But, thank you so much, R.F.Celestino. Thank you, Phil. Thank you, listeners. It's been great. Looking forward to, 100 more, whatever it is. Got 200 out of the way. It's great. We're going to stop talking about that now and self-aggrandizing ourselves, and we're going to get on with episode 201. Cheers very much. Transitional noise. Hello, ladies and gentlemen. In this part of the podcast, we are going to talk about Warhammer 40,000 as it was foretold within the confines of an event that Games Workshop did over the interwebs in celebration of an event that happened in person. Which of the events was it, Phil?
AdeptiCon.
Ah, yes, that's right. I couldn't find the words. Yes, the AdeptiCon, which at the time of recording is a thing that's happening. But by the time you hear it, it's a thing that happened in the past. Who knows who won, Phil? What army do you think won the AdeptiCon of 2025?
Elder. I mean, you can tell I don't care.
It's not that you need to care necessarily, Phil, but Elder's probably not a bad guess. I'm going to go with Kroot Mercenaries, an exclusive Tau Kroot army.
I mean, that would
think.
Be impressive.
Exactly. The problem is, though, you see, is if that turns out to be accurate, it doesn't sound that impressive that I said it, but obviously if people put it in the right context, it could be some kind of soothsaying,
Farseer, even.
Exactly, Farseer, yeah. There it is. Could be. Anyway, yes, we're going to talk about the Warhammer 40,000 stuff revealed as part of Adepticon's Warhammer community reveal event, bits and pieces. We will have done a separate section, or will do a separate section towards the end where we talk about the overall kind of showcase, but we're just going to go through the individual segments at this stage. In fact, actually, scratch that, Phil. We'll probably do... No, that's how we're going to do it. That's how it is done. Right, cool. Decision-making out of the way. Let's start by talking about Kill Team, which is admittedly not technically Warhammer 40,000, but it is Warhammer 40,000, isn't it, Phil?
It is. Well, it's A, the setting, and B, probably the majority of their sales are people just wanting the models for their 40k army, if we're being honest.
Absolutely. Yeah, 100%. So we have the delightful events of Kill Team Typhoon. Ooh, what's going on with that, Phil?
Isn't it Typhon?
For God's sakes, my dyslexia strikes again. Typhon, yes, why not?
Or you didn't watch the stream?
I did watch the stream, but that was hours ago. I can't be expected to remember all the ridiculous Warhammer words if they're just new ones.
But yeah, okay. But this is
the Kill Team Typhon. Sorry, yes.
Yeah, Typhon.
What happened in it, Phil? What are they talking about?
Well, it's the same old Typhon setting, which I think was in the previous Kill Teams, but you've got two new Kill Teams for two new factions that we haven't seen before on Kill Team. One of them is the Tyranids, and one of them is the Adeptus Mechanicus.
Surely we've seen both Tyranids and Adeptus Mechanicus in Kill Team.
No, not before. There's been no Tyranids before, and...
I swear you used to be able to use gene stealers.
You could prior as generic things, but I think in this edition of Kill Team, you need specific Kill Team boxes, of which
they are dedicated
Kill Team things, of which there hasn't been any for these two factions.
Well, now there is, I suppose.
Yeah,
exciting times.
And I think is
there rejoicing in the streets, Phil, at this?
I mean, probably.
Oh, sure.
Yeah,
sure.
I mean, Raveners as a whole box of Raveners wasn't on my list of Tyranid models I would put in a kill team, but that's what we've got.
We do. Raveners popping up from the ground, causing a bunch of ruckus or a bunch of bother for the forces of the Adeptus Mechanicus, specifically Servitors, which is really awesome to see. So yeah, let's quickly talk about the Tyranid contingent, the Raveners. So the Raveners, to be fair, did have a bit of a oldish kit now. They didn't actually meaningfully update the kit until this, I suppose. I mean, when did they last update the Raveners? I feel like they've been the same since when they did the plastics for them back in, like, I don't know, it might have been like 5th edition or something. They did a new plastic range for them back then.
I mean, I was convinced they were fine cast, so yeah, you must be more correct than I am.
No, yeah, they definitely did a plastic version of them.
Unless I'm thinking of is it the Red Terror, which was like the named character?
Yeah, so the Red Terror has always been, metal, then fine cast if available at all. The original Raveners definitely did start out in metal with plastic limbs, and then they did move over to plastics, and they came with 2 different builds. You could have them with lots of guns, or you could have them with lots of claws, basically.
Guns. Well, that's not an option in this kit.
Well, not that we know of, at least. But yeah, no, they've kind of updated the Ravener aesthetic in a way that's actually quite nice, in the sense that it is obviously distinctly its own thing now. It always used to feel like before it was just Tyranid warriors with tails. So these, although obviously very closely resemble Tyranid warriors because it's Tyranids, but I think they've done enough to kind of give them their own distinctive, unique flair, which is nice to see. What's your vibe on the models, Phil? Are you into them?
Sort of, but sort of not. Like, I think the sort of overall body looks quite good, and I think the generic version is probably the best one, but the specialist ones don't really do it for me. I admire their efforts in that they produce these like sort of specialist versions, and some of them have interesting nods, like the Wrecker is a little nod to the Wrecker Carnifex from Forge World, but the heads just all look a bit silly, if I'm honest, and that doesn't, they just look a bit silly, so it's a no from me for them. I think the standard kit where you just build them as basic ones would probably look a lot better, I think.
Well, presuming that is an option for this
kit. No, it is. They did say that you can build one of each of the specialists, but they can also just be regular, I don't know, warriors? Raveners? Yeah.
Yeah, regular Raveners. Yeah, I mean, the standard warrior profile definitely looks the strongest of the 6 designs kind of shown. Again, the problem is with this is one of those situations where maybe the miniatures in 3-dimensional form are better than the photography, but the photography isn't doing any favors. I think the color palette that they've gone with also doesn't really pop in a very strong way against the sort of orange and grey backdrop, which is obviously the design aesthetics of Kill Team as a kind of,
branding.
Yeah, the branding, that's the word I couldn't find. So yeah, I think that's the thing with it. It's like, I don't know if they've given themselves the best opportunity to shine here. I think when you see the models in the kind of photography where they're kind of fighting alongside the Mechanicus, and you see it in the videos, they do look a little bit better in 3D, but I will agree with you. I don't think this is a strong showing for the NID specifically. I don't think this is they haven't knocked it out of the park. This kind of continues in the trend of Warhammer 40,000 kits being a bit underwhelming.
Yeah, I feel like whoever designed the Prime was just inspired by Yondu from Guardians of the Galaxy. It's just too on the nose, that's all I can see, with that weird sort of crest on his head.
Does he have a rule where he has like a dart that flies around as he whistles?
I mean, that would make that would make sense, yeah. Maybe he does.
That would make sense. But yeah, overall, I mean, the Raveners, I think, ultimately, if you can make a nice looking normal squad out of them, that is obviously TBD. But yeah, I mean, when you look at like the Venom Spitter, I mean, it's a horrible face design. The Tremor Scythe, again, with all of its weird kind of like, horns. It's just, No, I'm with you, Phil. I'm not super into it. But again, as always, when I see it in 3D, I might have a difference of opinion. But as is, not the best. But yeah. On the Mechanicus side, with the Servitors, I'll wear my heart on my sleeve on this one and say from the outset that I'm really happy with this, because I think it really fulfills a niche that has been kind of overlooked, and again continues to kind of develop and deliver more of the kind of obscure elements of the Imperium. And again, I feel like it's always been a bit crazy that we've not really had a robust collection of servitors, given how prevalent they are within the world. So it's actually really nice to see that at long last, after the old metal sculpts kind of ceasing to be many moons ago, it's really nice to see that they've given us a kind of complete set of servitors. I think prior to this, you could only get servitors through... I'm fairly confident there were only 5 servitors in the game prior to this box set. The one that you got in the Imperial Henchman, the one that came with the expansion to Blackstone Fortress.
Yes, yeah, I was going to say there's Blackstone Fortress one, I'm sure.
Yeah, and the 3 that accompanied
Grimaldi. Yeah, I think you're spot on. Yeah, I mean, these are really interesting. I sort of like them, and then I sort of don't, only because the thing about servitors is their look is very like 80s. Like, they haven't changed the design whatsoever. And, sometimes I'm like, oh, that's brilliant. They've kept it based on what it was. But I sort of feel like it's like they're wearing a sort of baggy jumpsuit with bits of armor stuck on top of it. And I would have loved to see a more updated version of what servitors could look like, a new fresh take on them. Because I just think they are a bit silly. And I use the word silly far too much, I think. And maybe 40k.
You're so silly, Phil.
More maybe 40k is just silly in general, right? I mean, for what servitors are. But, these are pretty good and they're kind of classic, so I'm not going to dunk on them too much. And, if I could own a unit of servitors, I probably would. So, I'm not averse to buying them, because I think I picked up the old, used to be metal, but then fine cast Space Marine, Tech Marine with... I think it came with 3 servitors.
4 servitors,
yeah.
You're talking about the one with Techno Harness.
Yeah, so I picked those up just for the servitors, because I was like, I like servitors. Despite me saying that they look a bit odd. But I just think if they're going to do them in plastic, maybe they should tweak the design ever so slightly because they don't look that grimdark, I don't think, for what they should be. So...
I don't know. I think a lot of that comes down to paint scheme and how GW kind of photograph and showcase this stuff. I think once you start to see these in the hands of particular types of painters, I think they will start to get those elements come to life. Because certainly the old Servitor kits weren't particularly grimdark in and of themselves. Obviously, people could bring those elements to life, and I think that was always really cool to see. But yeah, I think, it's interesting because I think the old metal sculpts, given that they were a few components, most of them were like a solid base with a couple of like bolt-on arms and bits and pieces in terms of the build. So I think, those sculpts always had a bit more kind of, sort of artistry in the way that they would kind of sit on the tabletop, and how those miniatures would kind of, flow into themselves as sort of almost single piece miniatures. I think when they get into these multi-part plastic kits, there's always a element to it that kind of takes away from some of it. And I think when you're doing these kind of loose-fitting clothing elements, it definitely doesn't necessarily work as well as when they are compared to some of the sort of singular older metal fine cast sculpts, what have you. But yeah, overall, I genuinely really like these. I think the combat servitor builds look really stunning. I think they're a really cool selection. The specialists, I mean, again, obviously required for games of Kill Team, but the Techno Medic is not something I'm particularly into. And again, the Auto Proxy Servitor is, whatever, and the Breacher looks kind of cool in the general sense. But yeah, for me, the regular combat servitors and the gun servitors are really on point. Yeah. And the free variants are probably, if I was to pick this up, something I wouldn't invest time in sculpting. I think I'd just go for the generic servitors and be pretty happy with that. Yeah. And it's cool as well because I'd be intrigued to see, because servitors I'm fairly confident have been relatively prevalent within some marine codexes over the span of multiple editions. So I think it'd be nice to see people maybe considering adding servitor units back into their Imperium armies, because again, there was a time in 8th edition, maybe 9th edition, I'm not entirely sure, but there was definitely a time where the servitor squad was like one of those like quintessential units for scoring purposes. So it had they did have a moment in the sun.
Yes, purely just for doing actions, I think, and then that got changed to no longer be able to do actions, and then
that must have been.
They never saw the light of day. What did you think of the Caradron Overlord inspired Servitor Underseer?
I quite like how it looks in the video. I think the photo kind of picks a very weird angle. It's got one of those weird kind of like Womble gas mask issues again in terms of like how it's done. But again, there's a lot of interesting references there in there. Obviously, you can kind of pick up on that sort of Matrix-esque kind of spider automaton type visual on the background. So those are the ones that in at least the original Matrix movie would be flying around all of the kind of tubes, or picked up Neo at the start when he woke up and processed him, etc. Look, overall I think it's quite cool. That was it. I couldn't remember that. Thank you so much. Yeah, the Sentinels. But yeah, so that looks really cool. I genuinely actually quite like it. And I also really love the Techno Archaeologist. I think that's a really great kit in and of itself.
I mean,
and it's cool to see another opportunity to get hold of it.
Yeah, I think Techno Archaeologist is probably the best mini out of the set, which is a bit of a shame because it's one that's already existed, but maybe it's... Yeah. Surely it's sold on its own, right? Or is it not?
It probably has been. But it's nice to be able to pick it up in a set, I think that's always a win. I think that's probably why I will inevitably pick this up at some point, is because I think, the servitors and the 2 tech priests are, really cool sort of mini. So I think this is what... I'm very unlikely to buy this box set, but I'm very likely to buy this Kill Team at some point in the future.
Yeah, okay, that's fair.
But yeah, overall, I'd say the servitors look really cool, and the the Raveners, I'll wait and see. But servitors are definitely winning out on that. And then the terrain looks great as well. Again, it's very scatter terrain, so it's one of those kind of things where you're adding those Tyranid elements to your tabletop to give it just a little bit more of a Tyranid high fleet incursion type look. But I think it does a really good job of achieving that aim. And again, if you're in the business of putting in the odd bit of scatter terrain here and there, I think this is a really great addition. Not remarkable, but certainly, far from bad. I think it's serviceable, I suppose. I like it. That's what I'm trying to say.
Yeah. How about you, when they previewed one of the train pieces, I was like, oh, this is fantastic. It's based on like an old Forge World resin terrain piece. I was like, brilliant. Are we going to get the capillary towers and stuff like that? Which, yes, we have got them. But when I saw them previewed, I was really disappointed because most of them are just far too small. And as you say, they're just like scatter terrain. It's like there's one that's like the size of a barrel. It's like, oh no, I want these to be really big. Like they need to be 2 or 3 times the size that they've done them at one match the size that the original Forge World ones are at, but 2 just to actually be a bit more impressive on the tabletop. So, I mean, I guess it's fine for what it is, but it reminds me of the Kill Team prior Nexus, the Necron terrain that they did that was like the doors and the little weird barrel things that was just a bit underwhelming.
That Necron Brian Nexus stuff was pretty big.
So I feel like this stuff could have been better, but it's just probably just one sprue's worth and not enough. I did see someone actually say this could be quite good for Legions Imperialis, or I guess maybe not technically Legion, but I guess Epic 40k. Because of the scale would then make it really impressive, which I thought was actually quite a cool idea.
That's a pretty good suggestion for sure. But yeah, overall, the Typhoon or the Typhon is it's a middling one. I think I can understand why people were falling over themselves to pick up whatever it was called, Blood and Zeal recently, because it had the statue, which is a really cool piece of terrain, but it also had 2 kill teams that people seem to really like.
Did you get hold of a copy in the end?
Oh God, I had no interest in it whatsoever.
Oh, I thought you said you did at one point.
No, God, no. Do you remember what I said about it when we were recording last week or whatever it was? I was literally like, no, not for me.
Ah, fair. No, I picked it up because I wanted the the priests and
the jackals,
and James. I think his name's James from RFW. Wanted the World Eater half, so I'll happily split it with you. And I was like, brilliant. We're doing that basically. So that's quite cool. Yeah, and I kind of wanted the terrain piece as well because I was like, oh, it's so gorgeous.
That was worth picking up for sure. Next thing, according to the list, is the chapter approved stuff. Do you want to do that, or do you want to talk about the chaos stuff?
No, let's do chapter approved because, Yeah, we'll
do chapter approved. So the new chapter approved deck has been announced. There's not really much to talk about with this, although I'm sure we'll find plenty of words to say. The thing outside of the stuff they've said, which is basically they have tried to make the game a little bit more dynamic. They've essentially stated that they've listened to fan feedback and tried to create more interesting ways to play and introduced sort of new interesting kind of asymmetrical gameplay, as well as also fleshing out rules around 1,000 points a bit more, which I suppose is very interesting. The asymmetrical thing I'm definitely interested in. They suggested, although I'm not entirely sure it directly related to this. I think this is actually a point that relates to the Armageddon Crusade, but they were talking about, in one mission at least, that they had started to introduce NPC-style characters. So there's going to be like demons or something. In fact, I already know this is Armageddon.
Really? They didn't say that in the
live stream. Yeah, they did. Yeah.
I completely missed that. That sounds interesting.
Yeah. I thought you would have picked up on it because it was like one of those things that...
This is literally what we were talking about last episode.
I know, it's mad. Yeah. They're literally looking at like mechanics within that crusade where they're going to have...
That's exciting.
Quite fun.
Great. Oh.
Anyway, in terms of this, they've got asymmetrical gameplay, which I love. I think, again, more kind of opportunities to express more kind of, more kind of real world military kind of scenarios is always fun.
It's also hopefully, again, something that we talked about last episode, something that's more geared towards kind of casual players. Let's say casual players in terms of non-tournament players, although ironically this is a sort of the tournament deck. But I don't know how much we see of those asymmetrical missions within people's, tournament lists, because the well, it'd be interesting to see what Games Workshop do, because they put out their own thing with the recommended like mission pack and deployments. I suspect all the asymmetrical ones won't be in there, but the asymmetric stuff is great for casual games at home, giving us much more interesting choice. And I think it's much needed and something that's been missing from the game. So I'm really keen to see some of those and what they're like. And the fact they've also given you 1,000-point specific missions as well, I think is also really great, because that was sort of something that I think is something people play a lot around with. I mean, I do 1,000 points quite a fair bit. So it's good to see it's being supported a bit more.
No, I totally agree. I think it's definitely a win. They've also changed the way that their kind of catch-up or rubber banding mechanics going to work. So previously we were playing with the secret mission system, which was early doors quite powerful. Overall, I think people have kind of navigated it, but secret missions definitely had the capacity to be quite strong. They've now added in this kind of challenger card mechanic, which essentially feels very Spearhead inspired. So in Spearhead, you essentially draw cards that are essentially mission parameters, but you can also use those cards as resources to spend on specific buffs, stratagems, benefits, what have you. So essentially that's true of these kind of challenger cards. So essentially, if you are in a 6 victory point deficit, or more at the start of the battle rounds, you basically get access to these challenger cards, and they give you either a kind of stratagem buff that costs 0 CP, but ultimately, requires you to discard or, no longer utilize the mission element of the card. So it's an interesting mechanic for trying to keep you in the game without without there being that big kind of end of game swing.
Yeah. And actually, looking at the two that they previewed, the cards seem quite easy to do, or relatively easy. They're not like, because I think the problem with the secret mission stuff is they were very difficult to actually pull off. And normally it was quite clear.
Irritatingly easy.
Yeah, or I think normally it was very clear which one that you was out of the possible, I think, was it 4 or something? You had basically one viable option most of the time if you're that far behind. So it would be relatively easy for your opponent to deny you, or, as you say, maybe you've geared your army and you played it in a certain way where it'd be quite easy to do. But as we were saying last episode, Spearhead is a great way. I'd love to see that mechanic just almost be the base gameplay, whether that's for AOS or 40k. It's interesting that they brought it over into 40k, and even if it's not, the actual main scoring method, doing it as the challenger is a good way of trying it out at least and getting people's opinion on it. So yeah, this is all positive. I really like this. I'm really excited about this deck, basically.
I do think that we're starting to feel the benefits of the new team of designers that have joined GW to work on 40k, and I think this is obviously a product that has had their influence, and I think it shows positive signs about what we can expect in future updates. I've been really pretty happy with where they're going with like codexes, other bits and pieces as time's gone on. It feels like they're finding their feet with 10th edition. Still not my favorite edition by some stretch, but ultimately it starts to feel, I don't know, I'm more used to it now, and it's starting to feel like it's sort of coming into its own a bit. And this, it feels like, is a really positive thing. Intriguingly though, Phil, the first mission deck was called Leviathan, the next one was called Pariah Nexus. This is just called 25-26 mission deck.
Yeah, disappointing. Why didn't they call it Armageddon to tie in with the Armageddon Crusade that's coming out around the same time? Yeah, odd. Games Workshop has a real bad habit of coming up with an idea, sticking with it for a little bit, and then just sort of giving up on it. It's like, just be consistent. Just do it for the rest of the edition. It's not that hard, is it?
Well, yeah, that is more my thing. It's like, I don't personally care. Like, I think at the end of the day, being called the mission deck is fine.
Yeah, but I suspect the reason why is because I feel like they mentioned this where it was like, it's the same missions as before, and they're just tweaking them and they're just clarifying things, which was the only sort of thing I took note of, as in, oh, that's a bit disappointing. Whereas if they called it Armageddon, but then it's the same missions, that sort of feels a bit inconsistent, and people would assume it should all be like all new missions and stuff like that.
Yeah, no, that's fair. That's fair. Next, we've got the Chaos Space Marines, or the different forces of Chaos.
Do you know what we're talking about? The objectives?
No.
Oh. Do you not like them?
It's not that I don't like them. They're objective markers, Phil. I mean, what do you want to ebb out of that?
Well, I just wanted your take on whether you like them or not.
I mean, they're objective markers. I don't know what to say.
Okay, I would say they're a terribly messy design.
I would probably agree with you. But everything's messy now in Warhammer 40,000 when it comes to on the tabletop stuff. I mean, if you watched your average live stream of a Warhammer 40,000 game, it's like someone's just thrown up on the table the amount of like contrasting colours and everything. That
no, well, here's the thing. I picked up the last one. I actually really like that one because it's a bit more subtle. It's like you can see
the first ones.
It's got a bit of terrain, and then there's like I think it's the Necron obelisks in the middle, which look really good. Whereas this has just got so much like sort of design HUD elements over the top. You can't actually see the thing below it, and it it just feels a bit too much. It feels too much. Games Workshop, tone it down a bit.
Yeah. No, that's fair. That's fair. Should we talk about Chaos now?
Yeah, now I'm ready. I'm ready, Dan. We can talk
we're
about
ready.
it. Yeah. You have my permission to proceed.
Thank you so much. So yeah, Emperor's Children are now a thing, and now our focus moves over to the forces of the World Eaters, the Thousand Suns, and of course the Death Guard. First in the article is the forces of the World Eaters, which, as you'll remember, Phil, received a whole new exciting range of miniatures only a couple years ago. I think it was like 2022. The World Eaters got their flowers, or maybe even early 23.
It would have been. It was the year the 10th edition came out before
23.
That edition came out. So yeah, 23. So 2 years.
Yeah. So they've been around for 2 years. They essentially released with a bunch of Chaos Space Marine stuff that was like generic, like the Terminators and the Land Raiders and the da-da-da-da-das. But they added like a few new things. So they added 8-bound. They added their new Berserker kits. They added the Jackals. They added their Lord on Juggernaut. Most importantly, they added... the Red Angel, old Angry Ron. But evidently, they wanted to lean more heavily into the 8-bound archetype. Maybe they felt like, sorry, I'm going to sneeze. Excuse me. Thank you. Exercising the demons, Phil. Exercising those demons. Anyway, they were leaning, obviously, into the 8-bound. They are the new kind of sexy thing that World Eaters get access to. So obviously they wanted to give them a leader that wasn't on a juggernaut and thus wasn't going to massively hinder them in their efforts of, screaming across the tabletop and causing all sorts of mayhem. So we have been gifted with the 8-bound champions. The Slaughterbound. There's the words. I thought that was wrong. So the Slaughterbound, which is basically a character of some rank. I don't know if it's a lord or a exalted champion or what it is, but whatever it is, it's in charge of the 8-bound. 8-bound are terrible miniatures. This is a terrible miniature. Well done, GW. He's well ugly. But what do you reckon, Phil?
Yeah, I think the photo in the article is slightly better than maybe the photo or video that we saw in the live stream. It looks okay, but I don't like it. It's not great. I think what's more disappointing is that they haven't had a second wave of miniatures and they haven't got like their own Terminators or something else. And it's like, yes, you have those weird sort of Darth Maul style Jackals in Kill Team, which obviously will be in this codex, but that's the only new release they've had since they came out. So yeah, just to get a character feels a bit underwhelming for something that deserves a bit more love.
I disagree. I think at the end of the day, the problem is with these Chaos Legion specific armies is that, they're having to kind of pad them out and come up with ideas, and they end up with silly nonsense like Jackals and 8-Bound, right? And they just go, oh yeah, well, this is like the bigger version because we didn't want to do just Terminators. They use generic Terminators, and here's the Jackals because for no reason at all they need to have super buff cultists. It's just, to me, it's like the complexity of this is that, there isn't that much room for creativity within the World Eaters necessarily. Yes, you could come up with all sorts of fun additional things. You can have them on surfboards or have them, carrying a fridge up a staircase. I don't know what kind of units you would necessarily need. I've always pitched for the idea that they would do chain brethren, because I thought that was a really cool concept, the idea of them in the gladiatorial games being chained to each other. That is, a really cool, interesting aspect of World Eater culture that was explored really beautifully in the Heresy novels. So to me, that's a really ripe and interesting idea, but ultimately, they've gone with the 8-Bound. The 8-Bound's what you're getting. This is a character that leads 8-Bound. Whatever. But as a range, they are now obviously going to get the complete influx of demon support, right? World Eaters are now... Yeah, so now they're going to have Blood Crushers. They're going to have Blood Letters. They're going to have some other variant of blood. The Skull Cannon. That doesn't have blood in it. Ultimately...
Aren't they also getting, is it Karnak, the dog?
Oh yes, they admitted that they mucked up and forgot to put Karnak in the Demon Index, and they are retroactively fixing
that. I don't know how much that was a mistake or them just bowing to pressure to give it back to people. They did say they made a mistake, but who knows what's really going on.
Karnak was not a hill they wanted to die on, I suppose. But, look, I mean, I'm sure he's probably going to have some okay rules unless, the 8-Bound are due to get nerfed, because they've been very strong at the moment. They've got really interesting combination of stats where essentially they've got good invulnerable saves that are buffed by their Demon Prince on foot. They've got good Feel No Pain. So those two things in kind of concert creates a very... difficult thing to shift. They've got a decent amount of wounds, a reasonable level of toughness. So they've definitely been, seeing some positive performances, although overall World Eaters haven't necessarily been at the top end of the meta throughout the last couple of years of this edition. But I think, I don't necessarily feel like there was much else they could do, but I don't think that this was the thing that that the World Eaters players were probably wanting. I think most World Eater players would probably have just liked a generic Lord on foot, like just a Khorne Lord on foot.
Oh, that isn't like a named character.
Yeah, not a named character. Yeah, so like a geezer that you could just put in your berserkers who is a Lord. Because it's so weird. Unless they've made particular changes to the World Eater Codex, unless they've essentially decided to allow you to take a generic Lord and say, oh, it's a World Eater Lord. Because they have now obviously done Lord miniatures, so they've done the Lord and the Lord with jump packs. So maybe the new World Eater book will be able to use those kits. But at the moment, it's always sort of odd that, they don't have a Lord on foot, and I feel like that probably would have been better. Or maybe a unit of Juggernauts to go with your Juggernaut Lord might have made sense.
Yeah. Yeah. But,
so
it's not to be this time round.
Absolutely. The new cover artwork isn't as good as the old cover artwork for the World Eaters, but it's all right. Cool silhouette. Some interesting visual details, but ultimately pretty stiff, I would say.
I quite like it, but I can't remember what the original one was. But
fair.
It looks all right.
Fair.
Looks all right.
Fair. Next on the list is the Death Guard. Gorgeous cover. Gorgeous. I think it's just something about Typhus as a miniature or as a design that just kind of carries it, but him kind of atop a pile of Primaris Ultramarines all spewing all of the various kind of diseases out of themselves as he scythes his way through them. It's a nice aesthetic. I really like that visual.
Yeah.
I think they've done a really good job with that Death Guard Codex cover, which is cool to see.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that's good.
And I mean, Lord knows Death Guard probably need a lot of TLC when it comes from the rules perspective. Not that I think Death Guard are necessarily bad right now. I think Death Guard have actually done a really good job of addressing some of their problems that they had at the start. They've gotten over the kind of lethality hill that they were really struggling to traverse in the early 10th. But archetypically, they don't feel aggressively Death Guard-y in the way that their durability feels relatively lacking. So hopefully this new Death Guard book addresses that. We've already spoken about the Pox Lord, and I think both you and I were pretty fond of it. I think it's a pretty cool looking movie.
Yeah, no, it was good.
So probably not much more to say on the Death Guard other than optimistic that they get some good rules and that Death Guard will feel more like Death Guard again. That'd be nice to see.
Yeah, for sure.
Next along is the Thousand Suns. And oh my God, did they ever fumble the ball with this one? So, for those of you who don't know, Thousand Suns, famously in the realm of heresy, had these automaton, these, robot kind of assistants, these, entities that kind of operated alongside them and obviously took to the battlefield with them in the games of Horus Heresy. So it was inevitable that GW were going to give us a new kind of 40k adaptation of those, because it was one of the easy wins in terms of new units to add to the Thousand Suns. I love the fact that the Thousand Suns didn't just get another character and they got a unit. I'm just disappointed that this is what they got, because it's just a very bad and really quite underwhelming design. It's so weird in modern 40k to see miniatures so static. And again, I appreciate it's because these are representations of automaton, they're robots, so ultimately they wouldn't be as dynamic as organic life forms. But ultimately, I don't know, maybe again seeing it in 3D will help it out, but as is, I just feel it's pretty underwhelming, at least in terms of first impressions. I mean, what's your take on these Skekatar robots, Phil?
Yeah, the robots, they're interesting. I initially was like, I don't like them. I am willing to say that the majority of it being a poor design is actually down to a very uncomplimentary paint job. I think the white and the weathering, especially on a white background, just sort of makes it feel very invisible, and it's actually very hard to see the detail of what's going on the model. But I think there are elements to the actual mini itself that look a bit flawed. One is that the helmets just remind me of Stargate, but that's just that kind of Egyptian mythology aspect to it, so it's always going to have comparisons for that reason. It's very static, as you say. Gives me real vibes of the very first plastic Contemptor that Games Workshop did, where it's very static. The model on the right, where his legs slightly posed up on a rock, tactical rock, does look a lot better than the other one where he's just got two legs straight on the ground. His legs are very skinny and he's very top heavy, and basically the sort of fins on his back I feel are a bit too big or shouldn't have the missiles on them, and it's that sort of thing that is displacing the balance for me. But the more I look at it, the more I feel like it's got some real potential. I guess, for a lot of people, it's probably disappointing because they're like, oh, these are ancient constructs from a long time ago. But for some reason, they just look nothing like the other robots that the Thousand Suns had a long time ago during the Heresy. What's going on? It really reminds me of the Castellan robots, where they were like, these are ancient robots from even before the Heresy. And it's like, okay, but they look nothing like the robots in the Heresy, and they don't even appear in the Heresy themselves. What's going on, Games Workshop? Yeah, it's just like this weird, inconsistent thing where Heresy is really amazing at creating what I would call prequel miniatures, where they take the nuggets of inspiration of 40k models and give you older progenitor versions to show you like this history from, oh, this is the Rhino and this is now the Rhino, or this is, you know, a Death Guard thing and this is the thing that it came from, and there's an evolution over that 10,000 year period. That's fantastic. Heresy can do that. Whenever Games Workshop tries to do it, it completely fails. It's like, this doesn't look like any of the Heresy stuff. It doesn't relate to it either being before or after those robots. And ultimately, I think people would have been more happy if you just gave us the Heresy robots.
Oh, 100%. I think this is the thing, isn't it? I think they almost do it out of
deliberate.
Yeah, I think they do it deliberately. I just think they go, no, we're not going to give you it because that's
we're going to do
we know that's
thing.
what you're expecting. Yeah, exactly. They're like, we want to do it different. We want to create our own thing. And to their defense, I think that's a laudable aim, but you know, ultimately not if it ends up looking like this.
I mean, I don't mind when they do that, because they could have said, this is the evolution of those automatons from Heresy. Yeah, they look a bit different. They look much more chaosy and Thousand Sun-esque, because that's the trajectory of the Thousand Suns from the Heresy, is to look more chaosified and more unique. But for some reason, I'm pretty sure they said, oh, these are really old. Obviously, they haven't particularly said how old, but it then makes you go, well, that doesn't really feel logically consistent with the design philosophy of the Heresy stuff, unless this still came later at some point. Who knows? It'd be interesting to find out.
I mean, I will say I definitely get like a Castellan robot vibe off of these guys, and over time I've really warmed to the Castellan robot design, but it's only because I've seen really amazing painters do really amazing work with it. Like Castellans now have essentially bored a hole into my brain to create a sort of a safe space, I suppose. Like they've become actually a unit that I look at the design of today and think, oh yeah, they're quite cool. But like at first I was not a fan. Maybe 5 years from now I'll be looking at these going, oh, they're cool, aren't they?
I 100% think just a different paint job will make these look like 10 times better.
Yeah, well, they immediately, when I first saw them, I was like, oh, why have they got Morgeist Harbingers in 40k? And it's, oh, God, no, this is a new thing. The Morgeist Harbingers, by the way, being the big skeleton dragon creatures from Nagash's
Was it Bone Reapers?
Well, I think they're probably in the Bone Reapers these days, but originally they were part of the Nagash crew.
The Soulblight, yeah, or not Soulblight, but the fantasy versions. But you are right; those ones are actually, yeah, they have a similar thing on the backs. Yeah, But you are right. Yeah, it's interesting because actually, when you zoom in on the images, you can see they've got like little robot domed heads, and actually, then the almost Egyptian godlike heads are sort of just like shields on top, like they're like cows going over the robot heads. So yeah, I mean, it's got some interesting elements to it for sure. The pose, sort of the weighting of some of the proportions of the bodies, and then definitely the paint job, I think, are the things that letting it down.
Yeah, I do agree with you. I think as well with regards to that kind of robot design, it's got more of a like Leagues of Votan type of
helmet, definitely. Yeah.
So maybe that's it. Maybe they worked with the Leagues of Votan and got some robots made.
Yeah, quite likely.
Who knows? The Thousand Sun cover looks great. Like I think that's a great looking cover.
Gorgeous.
No criticism of that. And then they yet again try and sell us on these ridiculous collector's editions. Don't fall for the trap, people. The likelihood of you being able to complete this set of 4 at normal retail price is very, very unlikely. And, let's be honest, all you're going to get for all of your efforts is a medallion that you can link together and, I don't know, leave in a drawer or something. It's probably not worth the effort. But
well, exactly. Yeah,
obviously, if you love it, you love it. But for me, it's not doing much.
If you're getting 6 objective markers for each one, and you're buying all 4, you're going to end up with a lot of objective markers. You say a medallion thing, which will be quite cool and interesting. And I think the presentation and the box design and how the sort of sleeve opens up is very cool. The fact that the medallion appears on like the book covers. Kind of all right, and you get a bunch of fancy cards and stuff, which will no doubt be inaccurate, but whatever. I think I think the design of them are very beautiful, and actually props to Games Workshop and especially Black Library for often doing really gorgeous like book covers and stuff like that. The designers do a phenomenal job. Is this probably worth it if you're a diehard collector? I mean, why not? But you're not. I don't know. To me, the stuff is just tat. It's like, it's a bunch of tokens that I don't need, a bunch of cards that maybe I will use. And obviously the book's interesting, right? But, other than reading it for the lore, you'll do that once and then it'll go on a shelf.
Yeah, I agree. I think ultimately, it's cool. It's all really cool. If you're a big super fan of it, go for it. But obviously, I don't know. I think the baiting, basically it's this weird thing where it's like, I'm a World Eater player. I'm going to buy my World Eater book. And you get your nice World Eater book, and that's great. But then it's the idea that you might then be like, right, well, now that I've bought my World Eater book, I want to get a Nurgle book for no reason at all, a Thousand Sun book for no reason at all.
I see what you mean. That is a bit sort of... it's a bit baity. Again, also remember, these books are very expensive and they're going to be technically valid for a whole year and no more.
Well, there you go. That is true, I suppose. Right, okay, well, that was the chaos stuff. Unless Phil's going to throw something I've missed.
No, this time you are spot on. That was everything. Just overall a bit underwhelming in terms of the sheer number of releases. I think Thousand Suns, kind of cool if a bit of a miss, but I would have loved to seen the others get more than just heroes. I
think the thing was with the Thousand Suns, all of them is the fact that people are being quite down on it, but I think you do have to realise though, as Chaos players now, although many of you were probably doing this anyway, but you are now gaining access to, if you're a Thousand Sun player, you now have an extra 7-8 data sheets because you're going to get all the demons.
Yes. And here's the thing, I think Thousand Suns was a relatively complete army as is. Yeah, they don't have custom vehicles other than now technically the Sector robots. Death Guard, very complete army, so the fact they just got characters quite understandable because they've got tons of vehicles. That's why I think World Eaters oh come on, they deserve a little bit more, and they're
they've got about as much as the Thousand Suns do.
Not unique. They've just got access to the generic stuff, I presume.
No, they've got unique. So so if you do the side by side comparison, the Thousand Suns have more characters. That's true. Because they've got a bunch of different sorcerers and but in terms of the core units, and by the way, I think only Thousand Suns may only have one more character, but whatever. In terms of core units, they've got Rubric Marines, World Eaters have Khorne Berserkers, they've got Scarab Occult, they've got 8-bound. They've got Zangor. They've got Jackals. It's pretty much comparable.
True. I'm comparing them more to Death Guard because I'm thinking of all the vehicles that Death Guard have got.
Yeah, Death Guard stand out. I mean, Death Guard are still the most well fleshed out range of specific Legion.
Yeah, and I want to see all the specific Chaos Marines start at that level of choice.
Support.
Choice.
Yeah. No, I totally agree. Next is Crusade Armageddon. Obviously, hot off the heels of Crusade Nakman Gauntlet. That was the last one, wasn't it?
Yes, I got the. That's the odd thing, right? Like the first one we had was Leviathan. Then it was a long time, and then we had Prior Nexus, and then it felt like we didn't have anything for forever. And then it's we literally just got Nakman Gauntlet, and now they're throwing Armageddon at us, which, to be fair, might not be for a few more months, right? Potentially, but it feels like this one's very soon in comparison to how they've sort of spaced out the others. But I mean, this sounds interesting.
It does sound interesting because it's Armageddon, though, right? Like Armageddon is always a draw. Like there's a mystique to it. The thing that's weird, though, the idea is that basically Armageddon, a lot of stuff's happened, a lot of people have died. There's been enough blood that now corn demons everywhere. Rah! And then the Grey Knights, who have apparently kind of preconceived or viewed into the future and saw this, predicted this happening, have come to Armageddon and are pushing back against the forces of chaos. Obviously, they are further supported by the Space Wolves as well, which we'll talk about in a moment. But yeah, it's just... My problem is with this is, okay, cool, it's Armageddon, but and I'm not suggesting they can't wage different wars on Armageddon. I'm not saying that you can't have demons versus Grey Knights on Armageddon, but it does feel weird that the planet that is most associated with orcs versus guard is now hosting Grey Knights versus demons. You know what I mean? It's sort of like it doesn't fit the archetype.
Well, it does, because it's a retread of, I think, the first War of Armageddon, which was I think second and third. I could be wrong on this. The third War of Armageddons were orcs versus guard and other people. But I think the first one was very much Khorne and Grey Knights. And I don't know if orcs were also there at the same time, but you are right. They are sort of taking away the quintessential, most well-known element of Armageddon, which is the orc aspect, and sort of replacing it with these guys. And it's like, you could have technically done that on any world, but I feel like they just want to, they want to do a greatest hits and replay that old aspect where Angron first came back.
Yeah, which makes sense, right? I mean, at the end of the day, Armageddon is a name people know. It's a draw. People will be like, "Oh, Armageddon stuff, that's interesting." So it does innately, create more intrigue than other settings. So I do understand it. But yeah, basically, Angron has come back to Armageddon and he's causing a right old mess and is being repelled by the forces of the Grey Knights. Interesting bit of photography in the article. Why is the photography interesting, Phil?
Well, I was looking at it. So there's a few things. There's one, they've made a custom piece of scenery which uses a bunch of AOS stuff.
Yep. Lots of AOS stuff.
2, there's the cool Grey Knights flyer that they've painted up.
The Storm Raven? That's been around for ages.
Is there something else that I'm not missing? Wait, what is this? What's that?
Well, on the
big giant. Well, I don't know. Is that just for Demon Prince I'm looking at? He looks quite cool.
Yeah. Well, it was more just the fact that they're actually using. So in this image, there's loads of Age of Sigmar kits, like loads of them. Like literally, they've got the flipping the gate. The what does Richie? Well, Richie calls it a naughty word machine. But, like the terrain.
Yes, it's the Chaos Gate. I think it's called.
Yeah, well, no, they've got the Iron Halo gate, but then directly behind Angron, just in front of the skull gazer, the big, what is he called? The big Titanic, angry plow.
Lord of Skulls?
Yeah, they've got the...
the Chaos one. Yeah, it's the Chaos 8-pointed star, or whatever it is, yeah.
So they've got that, and they've got a few other bits. So it's interesting. It's just intriguing to me that they've obviously taken stuff from AOS and slapped it in there. I'm intrigued to know if, they're actually looking at doing rules or giving you like scenarios where maybe these terrain features come into effect within the game. Because obviously that's one of the great things about AOS is there is actually, especially for the core and stuff, there's like a lot of interesting kind of stuff that you could probably bring across to, facilitate more thematic kind of design elements, I suppose.
I don't think they're going to. I think it's just for photography. It's called the Nexus Chaotica, is that terrain piece. I quickly looked it up.
There you go.
The kind of corny demon prints looks really cool. There's some really nice elements to it, to be fair. Yeah. I guess what's disappointing is this, if you were going to do a Grey Knights range refresh, this would have been the time to have done it and to introduce it with all this like photography. Like the artwork on that cover is just phenomenal. Unless this is a classic Games Workshop last ditch chance to buy a load of old Grey Knights, get some new players in, and then, next edition it's like, oh yeah, here's your new Grey Knights, guys.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, Grey Knights will inevitably get an update in the next edition, hopefully. I mean, that's the thing, though, a lot of the time it's like, obviously we've been really spoiled with a lot of updates lately, but, some rangers just do have to tolerate a certain level of, age. It's just the way it goes. They can't do everything all at once. And I agree with you. It would have been cool if we'd got new Grey Knights, but ultimately, we're getting so much at the moment. I think, they have to kind of
slow down sometimes. Not every release can be a massive range refresh, even though they seem to do it quite a lot. But yeah, I think there are some times where they're like, oh yeah, you're just getting a character. And it's the same thing with the World Eaters, right? It's like, yeah, I'd have loved a couple more units, but some things do just have to get just a character. Although it's quite ironic because later we're talking about Space Wolves getting a whole new range refresh, even though it's just Space Marines. So I can see why Chaos players will be like, oh, the good guys get to have all the new toys once more. And we are left with not much.
No, indeed. Well, it's all that money talk stuff, isn't it? At the end of the day, a new range of Space Marines is money.
Yeah.
So much so in the and they don't actually. I don't think they actually show these timelines in these articles. But so much so, it's worth saying that like originally we were under the impression that we were going to be seeing like Death Guard, World Eaters, and then obviously like. The release schedule has been like chopped and changed a bunch of times. Like Emperor's Children feel like they were really kind of like dropped in at the relative last minute and gone like, yeah, Emperor's Children, they're going to be coming out in like March. And then evidently we're going to now have
all the Chaos stuff coming soon, like now.
Well, all the Chaos stuff, but Space Wolves will be coming out before the Chaos stuff is finished. So Space Wolves are smack bang in the middle of the Chaos stuff now.
Weird.
So when it was logical that you'd be like, okay, so they're going to do... Because I think the next one... I should just pull up the image, but if I'm wrong, I'm wrong. I think the next one is Thousand Suns, then it's Space Wolves, then it's World Eaters, then it's Death Guard.
Right.
So it's weird, because like obviously up to this point we were of the opinion it was going to be...
all Chaos.
The Chaos in succession, but they've gone, wow, no, we're going to put Space Wolves in it because, we need to make that Space Wolf money. But anyway, so Crusade looks fun. I mean, again, it's Crusade, whatever. But ultimately, they've intrigued me by the conversations around demon units and the idea that they will potentially add these kind of NPC elements. So I think that's given me enough cause to pay attention to that one. On the topic of Grey Knights, the fact they didn't get the range refresh, we've got a new cover for the Grey Knight Codex. Looks okay. It's not dramatically incredible, but it's certainly far from awful. I think it's, perfectly serviceable, but definitely not one of my favourites. I mean, Phil, is there anything you want to elaborate on in the old cover?
He looks like he's got a small head. It's too small.
Well, but he's got a big chest, hasn't he?
Well, I know. Yeah, he's suffering from Thunder Warrior syndrome. Small head, big chest.
That's it. And then they've added an upgrade sprue to be able to basically make your Nemesis Dread Knight or Grand Master in Nemesis Dread Knight look
nicer.
more like a Grandmaster, which, makes sense. I mean, ultimately, it's good to have that differentiation. So yeah, I'm broadly in favour of that.
Yeah.
But it feels quite light in terms of a new thing for Grey Knights, because I imagine most Grey Knight players who have already got like 6 Dread Knights are probably not going to be falling over themselves to buy or refresh the free Grandmasters that they already have. But who knows?
No, that's true. Mark, do you want to hear my hot take on this kit?
Yeah, please, man. Let me know.
It will probably be invalid in like a year's time. I think they're doing the Cadian upgrade sprue to Grey Knight players. They're giving you something that upgrades an old kit, and then in like a year or two's time, you're going to get a complete range refresh, and all of these models are going to be gone. So while this is cool and interesting, it's just going to tide you over until a brand new Nemesis Dread Knight kit is coming. It's looming down at you soon enough, because ultimately, if they will do a range refresh, they'll be changing the scale of all the minis, which will include the pilot. So this will be going as well. That's my theory when I saw this. And I was like, oh, it's interesting that they've done this, and that explains why they've maybe not given us another character or whatever, because then it's, again, they've got Castellan Crow, right? But that model just looks odd in comparison to all of the others, whereas this, you can upgrade it, does look a bit better, but it's not affecting how it looks alongside the rest of the models.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I do agree with you. I wonder if there will be like a future second-hand marketplace for that very specific period of Cadians.
People are trying to get the cool upgrade sprue for their old models. Yeah.
Anyway, cool. So that's the Armageddon Crusade and Codex Grey Knights. And yeah, this essentially acted as the introduction for the Space Wolves. So the Space Wolves have been called to Armageddon to aid the Grey Knights. And obviously, you know what that means. We're going to get ourselves another fancy box, this time in the form of Space Wolves. So, yeah, look, I mean, from the outset, what I will say is this Space Wolf box demonstrates actually how bad the Blood Angels got it. I think
you're so right.
yeah. I mean, yeah. I think look, I mean, at the end of the day, I got a lot of shtick for suggesting that it was totally reasonable that Death Company was just an upgrade sprue and blah, 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 which, in my opinion, it is justifiable, but it's obviously not desirable. I would have liked for Blood Angels to receive a similar level of love and attention, but ultimately the problem is with Blood Angels is obviously they've got some really cool characters, which I think they brought to life in a really meaningful way with the update. I think Dante, Lamartez, all those guys look really cool. And then, Sangard just, they're pretty mid.
Yeah.
And then, a bunch of upgrade sprues for the rest of it was pretty underwhelming. But yeah, like obviously where the Blood Angels kind of missed out, the Space Wolves are really, really winning, because there isn't an upgrade sprue in sight, right? These are all new kits.
Yeah.
These are all new.
They're all
minis.
They're all bangers as well. Like, I think this range is really good. And it actually does the one thing that actually, let me try and phrase this. It actually improves on Space Wolves from before, because Space Wolves always had, dare I say it again, take a drink, everyone. They were slightly silly. They always had this slightly naff element to it, whereas like the Heresy ones had those wolf helmets that I know some people liked. The current Space Wolves have guys riding on wolves, or their main chapter master riding on a sleigh. That's silly, right? And then this is all like much more serious. No one's riding on wolves. They all look really cool. They're all badasses. Like, yeah, they've done a really great job with these.
Yeah, I mean, I can only echo that sentiment. I know people have been asking the questions already, trying to figure out whether the Thunderwolf Cavalry is still going to have a place. I think they will. I don't think they're going to get rid of the Thunderwolf Cavalry.
I mean, I think the new guys with axes would be a viable replacement for them. Although these, I guess, are much more like kind of just cool, unique blade guard. But yeah, it does make me interested to see what they will do with Thunderwolf Cavalry. I
think they just leave them alone, because I think this is the thing. Like, I think Thunderwolf Cavalry are still good kits, and also they're just Space Wolves, right? Like, okay, fair enough, their scale's a bit off, but really, like, they're going to do one or two things. They're going to either give you a new version of it, or they're just going to leave the old ones in there. It would surprise me if they got rid of Thunderwolf Cavalry. It would also surprise me if they got rid of Wolfen. I think they'll remain in there. I think.
Well, they were. I wouldn't say they were relatively new, but they're at least probably 10 years old, and they have refreshed newer kits since then. But they don't feel that off. But maybe they would redo them as well.
I think the thing is it depends whether or not they want to kind of go in a very specific direction with the overall kind of representation of Space Wolves on the tabletop. Maybe they do look at things like Wolfen and they look at things like Thunderwolf Cavalry and think, actually, is this really what Space Wolves need to be? And do we want to try and kind of lean more into the sort of Norse sort of elements of it? Do we want to sort of, was the Space Marines riding wolves thing really the way we should have taken it? I personally think it's great. I think, I think at this moment in time, it's been so prevalent within the game for such a long period of time. I think you should just embrace it and carry it forth. And I think the best method would be to do a range refresh on those. But I think they don't need to if they didn't want to. I think they can just leave it as is. Yeah,
I do think they're quite iconic for Space Wolves, so I think they'd have to keep them.
Yeah, no, I agree.
But
I think that's the thing.
This edition or not, I don't know.
I think the thing is they're so, like, I just don't really understand why you need to, like, update the kits now, because I think we're in this weird sort of world where Firstborn and Primaris are now kind of intermingling to the point of kind of, complete sort of homogeneousness. So, and that's really evident, by the way, in some of these kits. Like, one of the things I love about the Grey Hunters, which I'm sure lots of people have already said, is the fact that the Grey Hunters are still packing classic, bolters. Like, they're not carrying bolt rifles, they're carrying bolt guns. And that is super cool to see. Oh, are you not?
No, I thought you were going to talk about the old helmets.
The old helmets are obviously there, and that's a really nice detail. But no, their weaponry is old school bolt guns.
That's cool.
And again, the thing is so Grey Hunters, when they first kind of introduced the concept of Grey Hunters, or developed the concept of Grey Hunters when they did, I think it was a 4th edition Space Wolf book, they introduced the concept of True Grit, which was a rule where basically Space Wolves were so kind of ferocious and powerful in their use of bolt guns that essentially, with the True Grit rule, the bolt gun was a bolt gun, but could also be used as an additional close combat weapon. So the idea is that, like, they were so adept at using the bolt guns in melee situations that it essentially acted as a pistol. And that's, I think, kind of represented in the Grey Hunter sculpts, where you're seeing a number of the minis carrying the weapon alongside a chainsword and kind of like, pointing and seemingly firing it while also wielding the chainsaw.
Well, because here they say the experienced ships carry lighter bolt carbines, but
they specifically.
So the ones that are, because the ones that they're holding with the chainswords are, I think, the bolt carbines. But I'm just trying to think. No, maybe they are all like bolt carbines, which is why. But maybe they just aesthetically look more like old bolters.
Yeah. The bolt carbine as a design does have a lot more in common with the standard bolt gun, I suppose. So actually, in that regard, maybe it's just that they just look close enough that that is just what it is now, I suppose. But no, genuinely though, I think the grey hunters look great. The blood claws look great. I think the fact that they've gone for these really dynamic, aggressive running poses is super cool.
Yeah.
As I understand it, the blood claws are going to basically have higher movement stats. So I think they're going to be move 7, and the grey hunters are going to be OC, so objective control free, using their wily old ways to be able to lock down those objectives with a greater degree of efficiency.
Yeah, I thought I said something else was movement 7, but then maybe I misheard that.
Maybe the grey hunters are as well, perhaps.
But yeah, definitely the blood claws. They said movement 7, and they're in slightly lighter armor, which I can't necessarily see other than the shoulder pad without the trim on.
Which is infrequent, right? It's not in all instances. So the area that you want to focus on is the knees. It's the legs. Yeah, so they don't have the extra shielding over the tops of the knees.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
And they also, as far as I can tell, don't have the armor plating on their kind of like waistline, because again, though, I don't think the grey hunters have it either, but some variants of the Primaris armor does have like a sort of waist armor plate that sits on the left and right side that kind of bumps out.
I can't remember what they're called, but weirdly, I don't think all of them did, but you are right, none of these have that element.
But otherwise, it pretty much looks the same. So it literally is just the legs are a little less armored.
I like the studs on some of the chest plates, like sort of the bolt studs.
Yeah, that's
very cool. It's like
I think
gives it a nice raw touch.
I think the face sculpts are really awesome as well. I think it's fair to assert that the designers have been looking at like the incredible work of people like Valborn and taking that as almost like inspiration, right? Because I think people like Valborn have done such a good job of like really kind of showcasing that kind of aesthetic of what Space Wolves could be, like the work he's done in terms of custom sculpting and building his own kind of beautiful range of gorgeous Space Wolf sculpts. I think you can really see how artists like that have potentially kind of inadvertently influenced these kind of designs. I'd also say as well, old Thunderwolfen as well, and his kind of aesthetic as well in terms of the pelts and other things. I think, those really, because people like Thunderwolfen and Valbjorn and other kind of incredible creators on like Instagram working with the palette of Space Wolves have just really sort of, innovated and kind of given so much more of a kind of impression of, I suppose, the possibilities. And I think what I love about these is I think they live up to that potential. I think, now, and maybe there's a conversation to be had with either of those two fine individuals in terms of their perception of it, although I'm sure they've amply responded to that on their own social media channels. But I think, there's when you look at this, it's almost like, do you even need to bother breaking out all that green stuff?
Well, no, I know. Well, here's the thing. I look at these and be like, when I get around to doing like my Primaris like Assault Marines, would I rather just buy these? And the armor's slightly lighter, perhaps, but maybe overall the quality of the poses is better than the standard Assault Intercessors. And it would be worth doing. Definitely some of the heads I look at for my Fund Warriors. Some of them are pretty good and would fit quite nicely. Just like really cool poses. Yeah.
The Wolfguard head takers are really cool. I mean, obviously this is like the sword brethren aesthetic, right? They got the shield, and they got the power weapon.
The blade guard, yeah.
The blade guard, sorry, yes, yeah. So, I mean, really cool. And the fact, obviously, they're accompanied by wolves as well is super lovely. Some really, really gorgeous head sculpts. Love the helmet that the dual-wielding kind of champion character has in the final panel.
I've not seen that. That's very cool.
Yeah, truly unique. Like not ever really seen. It's kind of like so it's got like a sort of central nasal shield that kind of
very sort of medieval knight sort of or Viking helmet.
But again, Viking helmet sort of style, which again, really, really into. I also like the fact that his wolf pelt has clearly, become a little bit more sort of stubby over probably a prolonged kind of session of combat, or maybe it's just that he's not, because so often with these wolf pelts that people put the miniatures get on their backs. Although this is true, I suppose, of all of these head takers. They usually kind of flow into larger kind of cape designs, so it's actually quite nice just to see the wolf pelt in isolation.
Yeah, because these aren't really capes like you would see on like older minis. Oh, I think I don't know if it's necessarily disappointing, but they really remind me of a lot of the Stormcast ones where they have the fur over the pauldrons. So it just reminds me of that, and it's not like a bad thing, but I've just seen it a lot when I've been working on Stormcast stuff. And it works really well here, I think. And actually, it is interesting that it's not a cape, as you say.
They've definitely taken the kind of gauntlet element from the Stormcast as well, right? Like that gauntlet design is very Stormcast.
I mean, technically, the Blade Guard also had it as well.
And I think I said they were Stormcast as well at the time. So but the head takers look awesome.
Yeah, the head with the eye patch. I mean, I love an eye patch. That is, gorgeous sculpt. I mean, my only criticism, and it's the same criticism I've had with sort of any kind of Space Wolf model, is that their shields just feel too small. They're just a little bit too small for me.
But I like that, though, because it speaks more to their kind of, martial prowess, the idea that they're using these in a kind of more, more of a sort of flurry of combat. When I look
more
at
like a buckler or something, although buckler's very small. I appreciate that.
Yeah. But that's the thing. When you look at like Blade Guard with those massive slabs, the idea, I think, with that is they're more kind of medieval, kind of like, knight type look, where the idea being that they're probably... you can imagine them sort of like just slamming their shields down and then just kind of poking people with swords over the top. Whereas these guys, you can just imagine them kind of spinning in a sort of flurry of attacks and things. So I think it kind of suits the aesthetic of the or the archetype of the of the army. But yeah, the battle leader's stunning. Loads of different variants on that. Absolutely amazing. My favourite miniature of this range is definitely the Wolf Priest. I think the Wolf Priest is absolutely gorgeous. That hooded skull helm, utterly stunning.
Because normally stuff like that ends up looking a bit silly, but this is actually done really well. I think basically they've gone, well, let's hide it under a hood to minimize the silliness, and I think they've done a good job with it.
Yeah, I honestly do. But again, any of the kind of fleshy heads that you could take alongside it are equally stunning. I mean, that bearded one on the top right of the images that they've got there, with the kind of side ponytail knot thing, it's just stunning. Like, again, that guy is a gorgeous centerpiece miniature and something that really just looks amazing. So yeah, massive fan of that. Just massive fan of all of it, really. I mean, I've never really aspired to play or collect Space Wolves in recent years. I'm not going to fall over myself to pick this up, but I think at the end of the day, a lot of people will, and I think deservedly so. I think, it's great to see such an iconic and incredible aspect of the Space Marines brought back to life in a really, really, meaningful level of detail. And yeah, I'm really excited to see what's to come, because the rumor is they're going to get new Terminators. The rumor is they're going to get some other stuff. There's even speculation that, Lehman Russ could be returning as well. They may get, new
surely that's
Grimnar
too
minis.
soon, but maybe. I mean...
I think they are. I think GW are in that weird process at the moment where, because of their continued financial success in terms of their performance on the
just roll
various. Well, I think that's what they're dealing with. I think that, this year for them, I look at it and think, well, you haven't got an AOS, and to be fair, AOS 4 probably didn't necessarily set the world on fire when it came out last year. I mean, we love it, but, it's fair to assert that it's not been maybe as impactful as maybe GW would have hoped for. And then, 40k is not coming again till next year. So, yeah, it seems logical that they really go hard with all these sort of things, and nothing quite sells like Primarchs, right? So,
I mean, it is interesting that they do a whole range refresh for Space Wolves. They've done like a massive range refresh for Elder, like their sort of final wave. They've done range refresh for Krieg, given us those in plastic. Like this year, they've done a lot of sort of big ticket releases, and maybe, as you say, strategically they've gone, we're going to save all of these for like the off year when we're not releasing like a new game system.
Well, that's it, right? Because ultimately, yeah, and again, it's no shock to me that they are also then saying, oh, and don't worry, Space Marine players, we're also doing Salamanders, we're also doing Imperial Fists, we're also doing this, we're also, you know what I mean? It's like, it kind of really does play to the idea of like, oh, we've got to keep and also capitalizing on, the success of Space Marine 2 as well, and creating that whole thing. So yeah, but no, look, I mean, the Space Wars are gorgeous. I can't wait to start to see these minis across the tabletop from me. It's not something I'm personally aspiring to collect, but I'm excited about it. The last thing to say in 40k is probably the stuff that's on the horizon. So we already talked about the Chaos stuff and the upcoming release schedule. They've basically got that, and then when they go into kind of the next part of it, the Imperial Knights are, coming down the pipeline. We've got the Grey Knights. We've also been teased the inevitable release of an Imperial Fist and Salamanders book of some shape or form.
And Votan, I believe.
And the Leagues of Votan as well, yeah. So lots to do, man. Like, lots of 40k to release this year. It's
so
wild.
many codexes to review.
Well, we're already in a backlog, right? Like, dear God. Yeah. We haven't done Emperor's Children, and we haven't done
Astra Militarum, but Emperor's Children hasn't come out in general release yet, so we're not technically behind. But I just wanted to make one thing about you talked about Space Wolf Terminators. In the limited edition Codex artwork on the cover is some very clearly custom Space Wolf Terminators that aren't just generic ones. And, you could say that's just fancy artwork, but does credence to the idea that there'd be Terminators coming.
Well, that's the 8th edition cover for Codex.
Oh, is it?
Sorry, the 9th edition. The 9th edition cover for Codex Space Wolves. Yeah.
So, maybe that was done well ahead of time then.
Yeah, that's old artwork, mate. Yeah, that's not new.
It looks good, though. Yeah, I mean, if that's what you get as a Space Wolf Terminator, I'd be pretty pleased with that.
I have to be honest, of all the old school Space Wolf imagery that they could have leaned into for the limited edition cover, I think that's not the one I would have picked, but I would have just by default used the second edition cover.
Of course. Yeah, anything second edition's iconic, to be fair.
Yeah, well, theirs was super beautiful, though. It was like a kind of Logan Grimnar-esque Terminator Lord stood out as like some kind of docking kind of like space ship was sort of in the background. It was a mad image. To be fair, I would almost also as well go for actually no, I wouldn't go for their old 3rd edition Codex cover, although I did like the lone Space Wolf slaying the orc on the sand, not the sand, sorry, the snow.
One final thing that they talked about in the live stream, which they said was a community question, and I felt like it wasn't because they had an answer pre-prepared, and that was about whether Yarek's alive on Armageddon, and they were like, no, he's dead. In a really like deadpan, like not even like, oh, he might be dead, winky winky. It's like, no, he's just dead. Just let it go, guys. And I was like, disappointing, but fair.
They did say he's dead according to the Imperium. According to the Imperial records, he's dead. But then they really laid into it, going, like, they have a body, he's gone. Yeah.
I was like, just rubbing salt into the wound, guys. Just,
Well, but I think it's important for the game that we move on with things. I think they should kill off more characters. I say it all the time.
I agree, but just not the most iconic Astra Militarum character, if not one of the most iconic 40k characters ever. Just not him.
I agree with that, but I actually think him all the more. I think, but again, do it right. This is always the thing with this stuff. I don't do these things right. Create interesting narratives that drive these things forwards in fun ways.
Well, exactly.
Do a service to those characters.
If you had him in the Armageddon book, and there was a mission called Yarek's Last Stand, and it was recounting his final battle where he dies against Gasgol, I guess, or maybe Angron. Maybe Angron kills him, and you can replay out that mission. And you read all about the story about his heroic death, as opposed to, oh yeah, well, he died at some point and here's his funeral, and we don't really know how he died. That's just a bit lame, really.
No, I get that, but I also think that, I think the problem is with the thing that confuses me a lot of the time with the way that they approach this stuff is, to me, it feels like 40k, because in the olden days it used to just be a setting. It didn't matter whether they were alive or dead at some point in the story, because it felt like you were playing.
When you played, it didn't really matter, because you'd be like, "Oh, I just played prior to him dying." Yeah,
and that is still possible. Yeah. But I also think the game was sort of different in the way that, as mad as it sounds, I know it's very nuanced, but because of how the game was once upon a time. Because it felt more simulation of warfare and less kind of board game, the significance of that character on the tabletop felt more important once upon a time than, say, characters in a game of 40k feel today. Because, as I say, every time I show up to play 40k and I'm playing against a Space Marine player, they've either got the Lion or Roberto Gilliman. Every time. Yeah, it's all right, of course. Every version of it. But again, though, I don't know. I felt like...
I know what you mean. The characters in the game have become so prevalent. It, lessens their impact and importance, both within your game but within the sort of setting as a whole. It sort of demystifies them, because you're now playing with certain characters like Primarchs that you never used to be, and they were just in the background as a story. Well,
it's a consequence of everything from 8th edition onwards. I think if you go 7th edition backwards, because if you were playing Force Orc, you could only take 2 characters, and if you could only take 2 characters, 9 times out of 10, you were going for efficiency. A lot of the time, with the way the characters operated in those games, there was so much more kind of war gear and equipment and interesting things that you could do with custom characters that you just leaned more into those.
Yeah.
So, things became sort of unique to you. Whereas now it's sort of a weird thing where, because everything's so rigid, the generic characters are just worse versions of the named characters. So you may as well take the named characters and be done with it.
Yeah. And there's an element of the power creep of what you had before was the best thing was a chapter master, and now it's a Primarch, it used to be a Chaos Lord, but now, or Demon Prince, but now it's a Chaos Primarch. It's these big ticket characters are coming along. And to be fair, Gaz and Yarek were kind of big ticket characters, but minuscule in comparison, both in terms of the size of the models in comparison to at least Gaz, what he became. So it is interesting. It's something to lament about, I guess.
Well, exactly. But yeah, look, overall, I think from a 40k perspective, I think going from start to finish again, kill team, half of it feels really good. The NID side of things probably will be okay in practice, but doesn't look that great in principle. But really hyped for the servitors, and again, the terrain has some functionality which I'm interested to see. The chapter approved new mission deck seems really cool. I'm genuinely very excited for that. I think that's going to be really great and really change things up for the better. The Chaos releases are all pretty mid, but I would say the Death Guard are definitely going to have one of the strongest offerings. I think the character for the Death Guard is pretty gorgeous, and I really like the cover art. So yeah, of the three, I think Death Guard are looking cool. But yeah, Thousand Suns and World Eaters really aren't, wowing me at the moment. And then the Armageddon campaign sounds really interesting. I love the idea of these sort of NPC elements that they were talking about, where you can use these demons in your gameplay. So I'm excited to see how that works. I think the Grey Knight stuff is pretty underwhelming, but it was always going to be that way, so I'm not utterly surprised. And then lastly, the Space Wolves are just out of 10, slam dunk. I think really, really nailed that perfectly. Yeah. So in essence, from a 40k perspective, I would say this was a pretty great set of reveals overall, but it's mostly the Space Wolves and chapter approved kind of carrying it. But yeah, what was your vibe, Phil?
No, I kind of agree. Some of it was a bit average. I mean, the Thousand Suns thing interests me because I just really want to see like unpainted versions or other people having painted them to, I still have high hopes for it, even though I don't think it's that great in its current form. As you say, chapter approved, really excited for, because that just generally seems to tick a lot of boxes of what I want out of 40k. And that they're giving that to us is really good. So I hope that ends up being really good. Armageddon seems really interesting, even though there's no Yarrick. But I'd be keen to see it. I'd love to try and persuade you into some games of Crusade at some point. Just so we can say we finally done it after, a couple of editions of not having played it. Yeah, Space Wolves is amazing, as you say, 10 out of 10. And how long has it been since we've said that about a 40k range? Which, well, I guess Elder, right? Elder was a 10 out of 10, I think.
Yeah, I think Elder were, but I think, Elder were always going to be good because of, Jez's relationship with them. Blah, blah, blah.
It's Elders, and the thing is, they didn't really rock the boat. They just gave us better versions of already existing good models. But my point, basically,
it's what they've done here with the Space Wolves, right?
Well, yeah, that's true. But they didn't do that with Blood Angels, right? And it feels like it's been a long time since we've had a really good, solid 40k range release, because they're just so like swingy. Sometimes they're great, sometimes they're awful, sometimes they're just a bit average. Whereas it always feels like, at least with AOS, you're getting much more consistently high quality reveals, I think. But
yeah, I think that's the thing. I think, yeah, 40k has been in an interesting spot, but I definitely think, yeah, these Space Wolf releases are great. And like I said, when we first started talking about it, I think it really demonstrates just how much the Blood Angels kind of missed out. But ultimately, we always said that everyone knew that the Space Wolves needed this level of attention to deliver what was right. Blood Angels, you could just kind of wing it. You could just go, it's an Astartes army with some extra stuff. And the extra stuff is basically paint jobs and a few extra trinkets.
True,
right?
But if you look at, the Blood Claws, it's like, why couldn't they have done that for the Death Company, right? Because they're very comparable. And maybe they've done that. We give you a stopgap with some sprues, but eventually they come around to giving you a full kit, and it sort of feels like, why not?
Well, yeah, potentially. Who knows what's coming down the pipeline? At some point, they will revisit the Blood Angels and show the love. But for now, we will just bask in the reflected glory of the Space Wolves and appreciate. Absolutely. Transitional noise. Wow. Hello all. In this part of the podcast, me and Phil are going to be talking about all the different Age of Sigmar announcements that happened at the thingy that they did a little bit ago. What was it again, Phil?
AdeptiCon.
Yes, the AdeptiCon. I will remember that at some point. Yes, Age of Sigmar was not a massive presence at the Warhammer community updatey thingy, But they did have things to say, and what they said was interesting. So hopefully you will find our opinions on it as such. So yeah, what did they do, Phil? What did they tell us about in this grand reveal?
They gave us Sand and Bone, which is a new Spearhead box set, set in another 2 realms. Or was it just one? Shaiish?
No, it's two. It's two rounds. You got, but they're both deaf, but it's 2 realms of deaf.
Oh.
So you've got the one that is the Bone Reaper version, and the other one that's more of a Soul Blight version, I think.
Oh, right. Yeah, no, but they're both set in Shaiish, though, which is... Because I thought the last one was each side was a different realm. Because you had the Realm of Fire and the Realm of Gur.
The realm
and then
of,
this one's just both deaf, but in different areas. Because one of them's Dolorum and Ossia.
That's it. That's
yeah.
all.
So
Ossia, yeah.
So yeah, because I was going to say, if they're different realms, but the terrain is specifically deaf themed, doesn't make sense. And maybe that's why they've gone. Well, it'll just be one realm this time.
Yes,
but yeah. So it doesn't.
But then they had that same dilemma in the first one, right? In so much as it used one set of terrain for different realms.
Yes, but I guess it was sort of like
Very
generic
Skaven
enough
themed.
to work, and I guess that was tied in with the whole. How was it the Nor Blight, something like that?
Yeah,
the Vermintide stuff.
The Skaven everywhere thingy that they kicked it off with. But yeah, it looks like some really interesting gameplay potential for that. Those of you who haven't played Spearhead, highly encourage it. It's a really fun way to engage with Age of Sigmar. I will admit I don't play it nearly as much as I should do because I genuinely think it's a great game, but I tend to play the 2,000 point version of AOS if I'm playing AOS. But I do really enjoy Spearhead and do genuinely recommend it. So yeah, within the set, you're going to get a set of new deaf themed terrain, to is again relatively small pieces of terrain, but add a bit of a deathly flair to the tabletop. So a few walls and fences essentially alongside some particular statues, iconography, if you will.
Yeah,
So
it's interesting that the walls that they give you are basically inspired by the Gardens of Moor, which was the old fancy terrain kit.
And yet, where is that fancy terrain kit, Phil?
Who knows? Because it's a really good one, actually.
It was.
Yeah,
it was. But yeah, and then you're going to get a new battle map, which obviously is double-sided and has 2 different, layouts that you can play with, and they will give you some new cards as well, which kind of formulate the kind of main engine by which the Spearhead game is played. So, yeah, it looks really cool. I think, again, might not be crazy popular because I'm not entirely sure how many people have picked up Spearhead, but again, for me, Spearhead succeeds in so many places that Combat Patrol really failed. I think it's a very, very good system, and I'm excited to see what this addition brings to it. And I'm definitely picking this up.
Sand
and Bone, I'm definitely getting it.
Okay.
I think,
I was thinking about it purely from the terrain, but I'm not mega fussed. I've yet to play Spearhead. Obviously, I would really like to. And I think, I think if I played Spearhead as my regular game, this would be a great update for it because it just adds a new sort of set of interesting ways of playing, from basically the objective layouts on the maps to, the card mechanics and stuff like that. So it's, a nice seasonal update for Spearhead. But as someone that hasn't actually played it yet, it's sort of really pointless me buying this, even if some of the terrain looks quite nice.
Yeah, no, that's fair. That's fair. And obviously within there, they also give you a book which will give you rules for a number of new Spearheads that will be available. 4 of which they have shown off here. So they've got 4 new Spearhead box sets. So first is the Cities of Sigmar Fusel Platoon, so more of an emphasis on the ranged components of the Cities of Sigmar, which is great to see. The old one leaned more into the kind of silver helm element, whereas this is obviously a little bit more range orientated. Amazing that they've also incorporated the underworlds, not the underworld, the Warcry.
Yeah, I was going to say it's one of my favourite ones because it's probably the most wartime warband they've ever produced for Warcry, with the dogs and the dudes with the little crossbows. So yeah, it's great to see that they're giving them life, and that hopefully means they're still going to be an integral part of the AOS mainline game for some time, and that they're not, doing what they did with some of the other Chaos Warcry ones where they're just relegating them to legends. So yeah, it's great that they're in there.
And I mean, again, if you were, interested in looking at Cities of Sigmar as an army, if you were to go out there right now, I mean, assuming that this is something that they may, take off the shelves in the not too distant future, but if you pick up today's Spearhead Cities of Sigmar, which is basically Silver Helms, Cavalry, and the Lord on horse alongside the Great Cannon, if you were to pick that up and then pick up this as well, you would be a long way towards a very significant Cities of Sigmar army. And have a really nice range of miniatures to, play around with. And again, the two things collectively would run you, again, if you looked at like GW prices, you'd be talking kind of like £190, which I appreciate is, a decent chunk of change, but well, actually, it's probably closer to £180. Bad immediate maths there. But yeah, it's a pretty significant chunk of change. But when you look at it in the world of Warhammer 40,000, the idea that you could get close to a full army for that kind of money is improbable. Although noting that Cities of Sigmar are one of the more unit-heavy armies in AOS, so you probably would need a few more things on top. But that's a really great starting place for a Cities army, I'd say.
I mean, it's very shooty heavy. I'd be interested to see how this gets balanced in Spearhead. What interests me the most as well, there's a tiny little dude all on his own right at the very back. He looks like he's carrying some boxes and a banner. And I'm like, what's his deal? Where's he from? Does he go with the Fusiliers? Is he like a little reloader guy or something?
Yeah, he's with the Free Guild Fusiliers. Yeah, I assume I can't remember what his rules are, but I think he's just a token.
He looks like a mini I need to own for my Codex Serfs and convert him up in some way. He just looks really cool.
Yeah, he is cool, to be fair. All the seasons are cool. I mean, I can't lie to you. I'm almost talking myself into doing what I just said, and
buying the box.
Yeah, honestly,
to be fair, I've criticised some of the aesthetics of Cities of Sigmar for being just too angular at times, but the concepts are amazing. The Warcry Warband guys don't suffer from that problem. It's more like here, especially you can see it on the shields and the designs there. But they got like an ogre with a guy on his back with a giant rifle. What more do you need? Like that as a thing is phenomenal. And this element, I mean, maybe the main guy who's the Alchemite Warforger, maybe not one of the stronger characters that they've done, but it's still quite a cool and interesting concept. And actually, all the units that you get in there are like really strong and interesting kits, I think.
Yeah, totally. Next along is the new Seraphon box. This is really interesting because not only does this incorporate a Warcry warband, so you're getting the Skink Warcry warband, the Hunters of Hachi, but you're also getting the Seraphon Underworlds gang in this box as well.
Yeah.
Which is super interesting in terms of how that's being put together. And yes, you're going to get your kind of standard Saurus warriors, and you've also got one of these, crazy, I forget what actual thing that's called.
What
is that again?
Is it the Sunbloods?
Yeah, the big fat lizard that's
at the back. The
Spawn of Kotek apparently is what it's called. It probably used to be called something like a
fire spitter or something. Yeah, I can't remember what they originally called. Yeah.
But anyway, that to me is a great box as well, though. I mean, obviously incorporates a number of interesting elements, but yeah, Seraphon are just gorgeous, and seeing that potential box is pretty cool. And again, the current Seraphon Spearhead features a character on the big kind of lizard thing. I cannot remember the name of it now. Not the
not Cold One Rider. Carnosaur.
Oh, it's Carnosaur. That's it. Yes, thank you. Yeah. So you got the big Carnosaur and the Saurus.
So you get the same Saurus warriors, right?
But you can a couple of units of those make sense, I think, for most of these armies. So yeah,
well, that's true. Yeah, I mean, it feels like you get a more substantial amount. I guess you're getting less big guys because the original one had the big Carnosaur, plus it had the Croxagores as well, which are like quite big characters. But this feels like quite a substantial amount of minis. Same with the Cities of Sigmar. Like, it feels like you're getting a decent amount in there. Oh, okay. I take it back because I just looked at the Osiak Bone Reapers and it's like, oh, you don't get many in here, but they are all like big guys, basically.
Yeah.
In fact, they've got the guys that we talked about when we were talking about the Thousand Suns.
Yes, they do actually also have those. Why have I forgotten their names now? But yeah, those geezers in there also, which is cool to see. I was just checking. No, that wasn't it. Was this it? Oh, here it is. Yeah,
they were the Morghast Archai. I don't know how that's pronounced.
But the Bone Reaper Mortazan Elites, again, really interesting box set. The thing I quite like about this myself is that there is a really interesting regiment of renown, which is Catacross, the Mortarch of the of the Bone Reapers, and 2 units of free Immortis Guard. So, okay, fair enough. You are obviously then getting a couple of things that isn't in that regiment of renown. But if you were looking to add, a 810-point regiment of renown to one of your death armies, the scions of the Necropopolis, this plus Catacross will get you there.
Oh, wow, you get Catacross. Wow, interesting.
You'd have to buy Catacross in order to. I
mean, to be fair, those minis, the is it the Mortis Guard you're saying, are actually really nice. Because I think some of the range is very like Marmite is very, you love it or you hate it. Those ones are really good. Whereas the old, what did I just say they were called? Morghast Archai, don't like. Not very good.
Yeah. And again, the current Spearhead for the Bone Reapers features completely different stuff. So, if you wanted to, doubling up on this is pretty cool as well. And if you did want to do that Regiment of Renown, Catacross will cost you a whopping 74 quid. And those Elite Guard minis are coming in at like 37 quid a box. So 2 of those is going to be close to 80. So theoretically, I suppose if you were really keen to do that Regiment of Renown, you probably don't need to buy this specifically, but you do get some value out of it. But yeah, it's cool to see. Very elite, will definitely be interesting. And then we've got the Ogre War tribes as well, that look really cool. Who doesn't like the Ogre War tribes, right? Like they're pretty awesome.
It feels like you're getting one unit that you're repeating twice, which is a bit underwhelming, but I mean,
it's just the nature of the army. I
the
think
limited range of stuff that they've got. But you get the Underworld's warband with the sort of shooty guy with the big crossbow and all the noblars. They look really cool and fun, little critters. Yeah, I'd almost want them just for those guys. But yeah, I mean, that one's okay. That's probably the more dated looking ones. I mean, I assume those ogres are super rolled, right?
Oh yeah, they're crazy old. They've been around years and years. They were in Warhammer Fantasy.
Okay, yeah. Okay, that says it all.
No, indeed, definitely in need of a bit of a refresh for the Ogre War tribes. But yeah, look, I mean, overall, I think there's a great offering on the Spearhead side of things. Highly encourage people to check it out. It's a great way of getting into AOS, and it's actually a really fun game in its own right. It is quite quick to play once you get used to playing it, but obviously you have to put the reps in to get to that point. But it's fun. Next is their General's Handbook, so the 2025 to 2026 GHB, as they love to call it. A very comprehensive offering this time around, which is very interesting to see. I have an initial point of concern. I'm sure Phil probably has spotted it as well.
It's the lack of ring-bound rulebook.
Correct, yeah. Although it seems that the reason behind that is because they are also giving you a card option.
Yeah. So here's the thing. I bought the last one purely for the spells because that was the only place to get them physically, although they gave them to you digitally in the app for free, even though you didn't need to unlock them with anything. And actually, I mostly just used the rulebook for that and actually the missions, and I preferred using the mission looking at the missions in the rulebook for some reason rather than using the cards, just because I've already got a deck of cards for all my war scrolls. I was like, I don't want more to overcomplicate it. But actually, I think doing the cards for the endless spells is actually really good because you can just take the ones that you need and stick them with your other war scrolls. And I guess, you just say you've got the cards now for the missions, which maybe I just need to get used to as a concept. But yeah, and then maybe the rulebook is super streamlined. Maybe the rulebook is actually just the rules, the season rules, and that the war scrolls and missions aren't even in there because they're giving them to you in card form. Because if you look at it, looks very thin in the mock-up. So maybe that is why. And, occasionally you used to get things like tokens and stuff, which I don't think you'll be getting this time around, but you are getting a full set of 6 objective markers, which is quite impressive.
A full set of 6 objective markers, which, if you've already noticed, Phil, are specifically placed on the battlefield in a color-coordinated fashion.
Ooh. You
implies
are an eagle-eyed person. Wow.
Which implies that they could be exploring a number of interesting mechanics.
Yeah, so it could be points worth different values. I think mostly it's for removing or, rather than randomizing. Maybe it's the red ones disappear or something like that. Or maybe some do certain benefits at certain points. Because it's interesting. You've got 2 red ones, 2 green ones, which I assume are in fact, I would assume they are more the attacker defender types in terms of your table size, and then you've got 1 purple and 1 blue, which I assume is maybe more generic ones. But it'd be interesting to see how it's done or what it means, and if it.
I mean, they do say here in the article they'll have more details soon, but expect significant changes to battle tactics as the system shifts to a series of sequential goals that you select as part of your army composition. So that's very exciting to imagine how they're going to bring that to life. Because genuinely at the moment, I've had this kind of grumble about the current kind of GHB. I think the game now, especially with its kind of rubber banding mechanics, has definitely become a very, very, very kind of even race in a lot of instances. And it really does come down to the last couple of turns to determine the overall winner. And I think that is a really cool and interesting way to play the game. But I do also think that it does create this kind of weird sort of dynamic where it's very difficult to kind of swing it one way or the other. and again, I like kind of win conditions that kind of resolve the game quickly. Like I don't want to, but AOS is kind of now more built around the idea is you've got to fight it out to the very last turn, which again I'm totally cool with. It's just that, you know, I kind of miss some of the old 3rd edition AOS mission structures where there felt like there was a little bit more of a pace to some of this stuff, but or you know, a bit more of a sort of delta, I suppose, between the winning and losing numbers. These days, it feels like in AOS games, I draw more than I've ever drawn before when it comes to playing AOS games, whereas before it felt like, yeah. So if that contributes to that, I'm very excited to see it. But I do really love the fact that in this box set, you're going to get a comprehensive collection of cards, rule book of some nature, and also the objective markers as well. Do you think those objective markers are going to be of a similar sort of style to what they sold us or what they might be selling on 40k, or do you think these are just cardboard?
Well, it says flexible pet material. So
there you go.
I assume, is that the same type that I got for 40k, where it's that felted bottom type? Which, I mean, it was overall it was quite good. I think the main criticism is quite shiny on top. But in terms of like, it was very flat, unlike that mouse mat stuff, which tends to be quite thick. And I use that a lot actually in AOS because unlike the new objective markers for 40k, they were very sort of understated. They blended in with the sort of the tabletop, and yeah, there was a tiny 40k logo in the middle. Well, actually the Imperial Aquila, but beyond that, it didn't look that 40k, so I could use it in both systems sort of quite easily. But I will happily use these new ones. My only main concern is like, what is the price point for this gonna be? Because it feels like you're getting a lot of stuff. And if it's like, yeah, this is 50 quid, because normally they sell objective markers for anywhere between like 20 and £50 or something ridiculous, if I remember rightly, those old mouse mat ones at Warhammer Fest. Yeah, I dread to think how much this could be, but I sort of hope, and AOS does tend to do it, where they give you really good value propositions and like these high-end products. So hopefully it'll be quite reasonable.
Indeed. Yeah, no, hope so. Last thing they talk about is the event coming up, which is the Scourge of Gyran, or Guran, whatever it necessarily pronounces as. But basically what it is a in-world event that they are doing between now and the release of the GHB, where they are intending to release free content updates for every faction. So they will receive new enhancement choices, or potentially entirely new battle formations, which is very interesting to see how that's going to happen.
Yeah. Do you think they were like, the not regiments of renown, sorry, the like the Grotma style detachments that they did for 40k and the subsequent free ones that they've done for the Balanced States Slay have been so popular, they're like, we're going to do something similar for AOS?
Potentially. I mean, I would assume so. I think, you know, it's fair to say that, like, we definitely need and probably want to see more battle formations added, or changes made. I think, you know, at the moment, what's been really interesting with AOS 4, as we've seen new battle tomes come into existence, is that in many instances, armies weren't really getting meaningfully new battle formations. So when you look at the Gloomspike Gits, yeah, okay, they did add their new Git mobs over the old Spider Goblins. So Spider Goblins were out and Git mobs were in, but you still had your Trugs and you still had your Squig builds, etc., etc. So essentially, in that case, it was kind of like a one-for-one swap. They took one out and put one in. When you look at Ironjaws, all of the battle formations in Ironjaws are the same. All the battle formations in Cruel Boys are the same. All the battle formations in Skaven are the same as what they were in the Index, right? So I would love to see some additions made on that front, which is what they're telling us they're going to have. And they are saying that they will be legal for match play as soon as the book lands, which given that they spoke about the General's Handbook prior to that, I assert that they are saying that these will basically come into effect once the new GHB launches, which will be interesting.
Well, yeah, because what's interesting is they say at the very bottom they've got that roadmap, and under now is Soulblight Gravelords, which I'm looking forward to, Spearhead, and General's Handbook. So that is meant to be coming imminently. And then we got Idnef Deakin, Blades of Khorne, Caradron Overlords, and Nighthaunt. And then in the far distance, it's a wing, which is probably
Daughters of
Khaine, yeah.
Yeah, very likely to be Daughters of Khaine. But yeah, so. I mean, for me, I know that right now on the AOS front, right, Soulblight Gravelords, gorgeous miniatures, going to be an incredible range refresh. Really excited about it. I think they're in a really great spot. But again, we've been getting great mini after great mini, great things for AOS. It's only inevitable now that the 40k train is really rolling out the station now, that they're going to obviously put AOS a bit more on the back burner for the next little bit. What we're seeing is pretty meaningful in the sense of, you know, this Spearhead update is going to be really fun. The GHB is going to massively change things in really interesting ways. I'm really excited to see, you know, how that comes to life. And then ultimately new battle tones for these 4 armies, or 5 armies if you include Daughters of Khaine is super cool. And I know obviously you'll be excited to see your new Nighthaunt rules. I think that's really great. So yeah, I'm feeling pretty positive about where they're at with AOS at the moment. Really excited to see what the new GHB brings to the game. Because, as I say, I've been loving 4th edition AOS. I think it's phenomenal. A really, really fun game that I'm having a really great time playing. So yeah, more of it is appreciated. Although I accept that, yeah, they're going to be a little bit, you know, slow over the, you know, next couple of months or whatever. But yeah, I'm expecting exciting things for AOS as we go throughout the year. And I'm really impressed with this GHB. I think it's going to be super fun. I think this offering is pretty great. So yeah, really excited to dive in and experience it sooner rather than later, I guess.
Yeah, completely.
Nice. Anything else you wanted to add on the AOS front, Phil? Just excited that Nighthaunt will come out eventually.
Yeah, probably more excited for Soulblight Gravelords in the immediate future, because I'm going to be picking those up. But also Nighthaunt as well. Yes, it'll be great to see what they do with those guys.
There you go. He's on the Soulblight Gravelord train now. There you go. He's like me. He has to have multiple death factions, whereas I seemingly need multiple destruction factions.
I'm going to be rattling those bones.
Mate, it's exciting. Well, there we go. That was AOS. Hopefully you found that interesting. I certainly did. Yeah. And again, play Spearhead. It's cool. Transitional noise. Wow. Hello, everybody, and welcome to this part of the podcast where we are going to talk about Warhammer, the Old World. And I'll pre-warn you, this is the segment we're directly recording after having recorded our terrible 5-star review segment. So hopefully it goes smoother than that did. But we already have recorded all the Warhammer 40,000 and Age of Sigmar segments, which may come after this or may have come before this. And hopefully, you know, those were an enjoyable experience all round. But regardless, we're going to talk about Old World, specifically Wood Elves and Beastmen, and then, of course, the mighty faction of... What is it again? Cafe, that's it. Sorry, I thought I was getting a bit too coffee-orientated with the terminology of it. But nonetheless, we're going to talk about the old stuff before we talk about the new stuff. And the old stuff in this instance obviously takes the form of the Beastmen and the Wood Elves, 2 of the more beautiful ranges of Warhammer fantasy battles available in the world of old, I suppose. So, yeah, super cool to see those factions getting some love, right?
Yeah, it is. And what's interesting, because obviously we did watch the live stream a while ago, this is the first time I've actually looked at the article, and the article has a bunch more stuff in it that wasn't shown in the stream. So this is really interesting to see, actually, and go through.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a really cool release, the Beastman one in particular. The Wood Elves are cool. I love Wood Elves. I genuinely really love that range. But I think there's just something quite awesome about the Beastman range. I'm intrigued by the Age of Sigmar models that have moved over to Old World. That's definitely a cool thing to see happen. Because obviously some of the kind of chieftains and shaman miniatures were released in the kind of cycled annual regular war scroll update battle tome, here's your token plastic character releases. So it's quite interesting to see the kind of AOS minis moving over into the world of fantasy. But I mean, obviously they fit the aesthetic really well. It's super cool to see. I think, the plastic minis that they had done for AOS for the Beastmen are amongst some of the nicest. I love the Chieftain in particular. I think it's really cool. It's intriguing to assert or imagine what is going to be happening with their manifestations and their terrain piece from Age of Sigmar, because those are two actually, or rather four collectively, really pretty minis. The endless spells, the manifestations for the Beastmen in AOS were actually amongst the most beautiful manifestations available. Manifestations being typically quite ugly. The beasts had some pretty cool ones, and that terrain piece, that stone kind of altar that they had was super cool. So, I mean, not shocking that they didn't move over into the world of old, but I was hopeful that maybe they might, and maybe they still will.
I thought the terrain piece, the altar, was going to be based on the stream. Obviously, it's not shown here, and it's just a terrain piece, right? So it sort of feels like no reason why it wouldn't. But yeah, the endless spells I can't imagine coming across, just based on how spells seem to work in the old world at the moment. But you never know.
I don't see it happening, but but there's some really cool stuff. The plastic miniatures for the Beastmen are really lovely, and seeing them back on their square bases is super cool. Ranked up, they do it really well. They've got a really good selection of plastics, but probably what was most interesting to me and Phil is seeing some of the resin sculpts that they're bringing back. Obviously, they've got this new kind of shaman geezer with his little kind of crazy golem fella. Really, really cool combo. The big kind of Bulgor in armor with his massive two-handed axe. That's super cool. But we were most interested, when we Phil, in these lovely monsters. We love a monster, a roaming beast, and they've provided us with free classics returning. I feel like at least one of these has already kind of cycled throughout the last year of Old World. I feel like the Jabberwocky, the Jabber Sliff geezer, had a moment in the sun. Or maybe I'm just wrong about that, and that actually it hadn't. But I am sorely tempted to pick up all three of these gorgeous beasts. Why don't you say a bit more about them?
Yeah, I mean, they're all really nice. The Jabberwocky-esque one, which is the Jabbersliff, is actually, quite an iconic, I think, Forge World miniature. I sort of always like to look at it. I mean, to be honest, a lot of those Forge World monsters I've always just loved the look of, and I've always wanted to get them to somehow add into my collection in some form or another. And yeah, these ones are really beautiful. Yeah, the Cockatrice one's very cool. The one that took my fancy the most, or at least interest, was the Praeton, which they say is once great stags of the forest, corrupted by foul magics of the Brahms. Because that just looks like a mad mini that I don't ever recall seeing before. So I assume it was around the time when I wasn't particularly into Warhammer Fantasy, and it was just a Forge World mini, and I feel like it maybe got discontinued from Fantasy before I was sort of actively, 14, 15 odd years ago back in the hobby, because I definitely remember seeing the Jabbersliff loads and some of the other bigger monsters.
I did too.
So I sort of feel like maybe that's a much older one, but it does say returning resin, which implies it was resin and not a metal mini, so therefore a Forge World kit all those years ago. And it looks sort of detailed enough to be. I mean, it's not quite as it's got a little bit of jank to it, which does make me feel like, could it have been an old metal mini that they've put into resin, though?
I don't think it is, because I went back and I looked very quickly, and it's a very kind of rudimentary Google search that I've done. But yeah, there are definitely images of this miniature in its resin form.
But it does say they've sensitively remastered the miniatures and will release it in gorgeous, supple Forge World resin rather than fine cast. So either they're all Forge World miniatures made in resin, and they're just restating that fact because people just have such a big fear of fine cast, even though they're phasing it out, right? Or that one was fine cast originally. The other two were definitely Forge World resin, and that's why they've mentioned it's Forge World resin rather than fine cast. But they've not been absolutely clear on those. So who knows?
Yeah, whatever the case, it's a cool mini. And again, you're right. It's got some rough edges. It's got a bit of a quirkiness to it. It's not one of the most sleek modern sculpts, but I really love it for its kind of unique artistry. I've got a real soft spot for that kind of quirky, mad, old kind of sculpting techniques. It's kind of like, I suppose, when people get very nostalgic about traditional kind of movie making techniques where they're using puppets and practical effects and that kind of thing. There's a certain kind of human element that really kind of comes through in the sculpting, which is, you look at it and you think, well, there's some beautiful artistry in that, as opposed to, if I can be so crass, I feel like a lot of the time with modern stuff, it's really beautifully executed, but it feels more kind of a craft than an art, if that makes sense.
Yeah. I mean, so the sort of what I would say the jankiness of that sculpt might not necessarily be because it's a very old mini, although it could be, but it could just be it's meant to look weird. And it's because it's a weird corrupted beast, so it is sort of got that slightly sort of gaunt, slender elements to it, which is very reminiscent of much older, like Warhammer monsters, and that might be a deliberate design choice. Whereas the other two are very like chunky and big, right? They're big lumps of resin, which could be because it's just meant to almost be a very malnourished looking monster.
Quite possibly, but mate, really cool to see those guys available. Definitely something I'm looking to add to my own collection for just my growing Warhammer Old World fun. I actually feel the other day Element Games finally delivered my human or Imperium or Empire Stronghold.
Oh, wow.
So I now have my castle set at long last.
That took a long time.
It did take a long time, but I've got it now, so that's all that matters. But, and then some of the metal stuff's cool. So, really great to see the Beastman coming back around. Love the range, even though it is quite dated, but definitely feels very appropriate within the world of, fantasy or old world. I definitely was amongst the people asserting that, against the backdrop of Age of Sigmar, these and the ogres probably were looking down the barrel of a more kind of current range refresh, but within the realms of the old world, it feels really appropriate. And again, it's really amazing to see him just bringing back some of the old sculpts, which, to be fair, would have been incredibly popular in Age of Sigmar as much as they will be, obviously, in fantasy. But it's great to see, and I think a lot of people hopefully will find a lot of opportunities to either collect these guys for the first time, or if they are tried and true, long-standing Beastman players, hopefully it won't be too much of a, nightmare to move these over into Old World and enjoy that game system. Although I accept a lot of the time with that stuff, it still doesn't necessarily sweeten the pill that much if you enjoy Age of Sigmar and want to keep playing Age of Sigmar and now have to play, with your army in the Old World setting. But there's always things you can do. I mean, ultimately, you can just take your Beastman army and just go, it's Blades of Khorne, whatever.
Just run them as proxies or something. I mean, to be honest, the Chorgons, which are the giants, are beautiful, and I'm almost surprised that they're just not subsumed into the giant range, the Sons of Behemoth.
Oh, the Sons of the Behemoth.
You could just be like, yeah, cool. They're these, bestial versions of giants, and they team up or whatever, and just add them to the range, because obviously they would sort of fit from a giant perspective. But maybe they've got their reasons or law reasons why they wouldn't want to do that, or they just want to put them in Old World and don't have any cross compatibility whatsoever, which seems to be the case. I forgot how.
They are shunned by the other giants. They're like, no, too much,
exactly.
too much.
But they're gorgeous, those models. I forgot how great those giant kits are. So yeah, it's nice to see them again.
Stunning. Mate, honestly, genuinely, the Beastmen are a really cool, quintessential, fantasy range. They're a really awesome thing. Yeah, okay, fair enough. They've not necessarily always enjoyed a certain level of competitive prowess, but they've always been a really fun, interesting army with a lot of really great flavour. And I imagine in Old World they will probably be superior to how they were back in the day in like 8th and 7th and so on and so forth. Just because, like all things these days, Games Workshop, they do try and achieve a greater level of balance. Although the Old World is much more asymmetrical than other systems. And I suppose that's, represented by the next faction, which is, of course, elves. Elves are always good, and wood elves are often extra good, at least when it comes to fantasy. I love the elf range, or rather the wood elf range. I think they've just done some amazing work with it. It still confuses me that they have basically continued to use like the old school Treeman sculpts within the wood elves, given that obviously the Treeman were introduced in fantasy in late 8th edition or whatever it was.
So the ones that are now for Sylvaneth, those Treeman.
Yes, correct.
I guess that's the problem, where they can't divvy them up, or they have to divvy them up, and they've gone, well, these are now so iconic and quintessential to the Sylvaneth range, we can't bring them back to Old World, so they've had to use older Treeman. But yeah, that looks like a very old Treeman.
Yeah, I mean, again, it is what it is.
And some of it's nostalgia
the other thing that's
right. People do like getting access to some of the older sculpts, and here's the thing: everyone can just buy those existing ones from the AOS range and just stick them on a square base if they want to. It's not that difficult.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And that's completely within the realms of acceptability. I think it's interesting because also what's evident here, and again, I haven't listened specifically to the live stream segment on this, and I have to be honest as well, haven't read the army listing for Wood Elves either, as it appears in the standard book. But at least within the photography and this article, it's intriguing that we don't see any dryads either, given how kind of ever-present they've been within the Wood Elf range over the years. Maybe, again, they're in there and they're just not photographed at this time, because equally there's no, or seemingly no war dance. There's no war dances either within the article, and it's fair to assert that those still remain. I'm pretty sure war dances are still very much a thing, so maybe I'm just being a little bit kind of hyperbolic here. But yeah, look, I mean, the Wood Elf range really benefits from the fact that it got a meaningful update towards the end of 8th edition, and towards the end of 8th edition Warhammer was a time where a lot of the plastics and a lot of the really great stuff was coming out, and Warhammer Fantasy at that time was getting really awesome kits, and that is still kind of personified here with a lot of these Rangers and Glade Guard and all these other things. It's a really cool range, and undoubtedly, because it's Wood Elves, will be strong on the tabletop still. So yeah, cool to see it. Not thrilled about facing them across the tabletop, but at the end of the day, they're still squishy. They're still elves. Just gotta try and hit them is always the challenge. But yeah, I don't really have much to say beyond the fact that this range is pretty standard. So I mean, it doesn't have as many treasures in it as the Beastmen, I would say. But maybe you have strong feelings about something in particular within this lineup?
Well, like you, I actually think it's a really strong range. And when I saw the reveals, I assumed that some of them, like the plastic character and the plastic cavalry, were like new, because I was like, oh wow, they're really like gorgeous sculpts. But they're just old sculpts. They're just, maybe not as old as some of the other old world stuff. So yeah, they really hold up, actually. I mean, some of the returning metal stuff looks quite interesting. Obviously, they're looking a lot more dated, but I like the Lord flying on the giant eagle. It's like, yeah, quintessential old school fantasy in my book. Yeah, they're cool. The range is very interesting and very stunning as is, which is pretty impressive.
Yeah.
As you say, maybe what's potentially notable is what's absent from it, or at least, will the things like the Dryads be missing in the final book? Who knows? Oh, the other thing worth saying, I think, actually, was it with these ones? No, it was with Cafe. I think they said about that book is like a comprehensive and complete one, whereas these arcane journals are like the current arcane journals, where they're just sort of like bolt-ons. Whereas the Cafe one is like a complete codex, effectively, for that army.
It's very exciting. Yeah, look, I mean, yeah, it's understandable given what the Cafe release is, and we should talk about it now. But look, Wood Elves, love the range, cool to see it. Genuinely think a lot of people are going to be really excited about this. My buddy Chris was talking to me about it just this afternoon. Talking about how excited he is that they got the Wood Elves, because he's doing Wood Elves in Old World. So yeah, keen to get some games in with him soon. Joe's working on my skeletons currently. Good old Joe. Yeah, hopefully I can start to push the old dry bones around the fields of the Old World. It'll be a beautiful thing to behold. And hopefully at some point, Phil, you'll get your Chaos Dwarves done and we can have a big old world schmoz.
No, that'd be good. I just need to glue them to some bases. Well, I need to strip them first, really, and then glue them down.
There you go. Just how you like them. Anyway, we're going to talk about Cafe now, because this has been long awaited and something that obviously fans of the Old World have been really excited about. It was something that Games Workshop was starting to showcase early doors. They were starting to give indications when they started to talk about Old World all that time ago, that they were going to be looking at these ranges and introducing new miniatures and doing lots of amazing stuff. And yeah, this is obviously a incredible stamp of authority, of faith and enthusiasm, I suppose, for the game of Warhammer Fantasy, right? Like, this is a moment that essentially shows that the game is elevated beyond just being a nostalgia bait, beyond just being, a place where a bunch of old armies and miniatures get together to essentially, pull on your heartstrings. This is an entirely new range, and quite possibly one of the most beautiful ranges of Citadel miniatures ever released. I think it might be a little bit extreme to say it in such terms, but I think, to me, in recent memory, some of the really strong ranges that have stood out to me have been things like, say, Cities of Sigmar, or even, the Flesh Eater Core update. The Skaven refresh really had some beautiful moments in it. You'll notice nothing in 40k has really blown me away, although the Space Wolves look great, to be fair to them.
The Elder Range refresh was great.
Yeah, the problem is with that is it was still a bit piecemeal. Yeah, unsurprised. It was great. It was just not. It felt very safe. I would have liked to have seen more like Morgan Ra style redesigns in places. But anyway, look. The point is this to me sits amongst those as some of the most incredible ranges that have been introduced, basically. And I think it's so difficult to look at this and not want to buy it. That's the problem with it. It's like, oh my God, I need it. It is it's just all of it is amazing.
Yeah, yeah. I think out the bat, it's pretty fantastic. And as you say, it's trying to think of what was the last new faction, like a brand new for AOS. You'd have to go back a while to.
It was technically Cities of Sigmar.
Yeah, but that was actually, sort of, although it wasn't, because ultimately that was just a very big range refresh, but a lot of the units were new, so, as you say. But if you were to be, like, out the bat, brand new factions, obviously Emperor's Children, you could argue, is one for 40k, although it has existed sort of in the past, but... Yeah, it's much more like its own defined faction, whereas before it was just a few units as part of Chaos, right?
This, reigns supreme. If you're talking about this and Leagues of Votann, they are leagues apart. Like literally, Leagues of Votann, cannot tie this army shoes in terms of aesthetics. It's stunning.
I guess it's worth saying that these guys have existed in the background for years. They've always been in the map, for example, with I wouldn't say Arabe. I think it was like Arabia, but it had its own spin on the word. They've always been there. These guys have been in Total War, the game, so people have accurately speculated what sort of units would be coming just based on what's in the game. And I think when they produced, their man Kislev in Total War, they basically said they made 8-fed army books for them and Games Workshop did all the concept artwork for it. So it's not like this is stuff created by Creative Assembly. It's actually all been stuff, in-house designed from Games Workshop from the ground up, ported over to a game, and then weirdly sort of ported back for the old world. So, but yeah, I mean, it's like phenomenal stuff that we've seen so far. I'm sure there will be probably more stuff down the line at some point that would come out, but yeah, they've done a fantastic job with these minis.
Oh God, I mean, the chef's kiss is definitely the Sky Lanterns. I think it's such a different thing to see on the tabletop. Yes, okay, fair enough. We've had dwarf gyrocopters, and we've had some other sort of missile-style flying units like the grot, or rather, sorry. Goblin divers.
Doom
I forget
divers.
what they're called now.
Yeah,
like we've had aerial units, obviously eagles, dragons, that kind of stuff. But this is
technically dwarf blimps and balloons have existed in the game via Man O' War in terms of models. They've had larger stuff in there, and also I believe what's it called? The Warhammer. Like the small version of Warhammer, not Warlords.
War Master.
Yeah, so they had some stuff in that as well. And to be honest, this lantern is almost like quintessential what could have been a dwarf like airship balloon in fantasy. And I think years ago as a kid, I tried to sculpt one out of paper mache and a balloon. I got nowhere with it, but the concept and dream was there. So seeing sort of like the cafe version of it. It is utterly gorgeous. It's, they said it's probably one of the biggest models out there. And the fact that it's all plastic is just going to be like, wow, it's just gorgeous, right? And it's interesting to see how it's going to work. It can have like a command unit in there as well. It can act as like, line of sight for artillery stuff. And obviously it's got like little bombs and all sorts going on as well. So it's, it's a gorgeous model, but cool. It'd be cool to see how it like plays on the tabletop as well.
Yeah, I mean, it's special, that miniature. Like, I think it's one of those moments where you just sort of see Games Workshop at their best. I think it's like the silhouette is stunning, the kind of character and the expressiveness of the characters, the dynamic nature of it. Ultimately what you're looking at is a very kind of static piece in the fact that it is this very kind of stable, still, slow-moving hot air balloon. But the inhabitants, the crew occupying it are just utterly overwhelming you with just all their
like
kind
the detail
of
and stuff.
expressiveness and character. Yeah, it will take you a good whack of time to get that painted to anything resembling the kind of quality that obviously this, heavy metal paint scheme kind of showcases. But what a phenomenal model kit.
I hope that base is super stable, because I would not want to accidentally knock this over, or have someone put a laptop on it, Dan.
Or have someone put a laptop on it. No, absolutely. You don't want laptops. To be fair to my laptop antics, I didn't put it on it. I put it sort of adjacent to it in such a way as it sort of, it was more like, it was like I like a game of Pogs. Pogs
so,
where
yeah.
So I sort of hid it on the side. I just sort of flipped it at just the right angle, basically.
Yeah, it's...
But unlike in a game of Pogs, Phil, you berated me for doing it rather than let me take the miniature home. Because if that was Pogs, I would have collected.
Yeah.
I would have won it. Anyway, look, stunning mini, gorgeous range. The Sentinel kit looks utterly incredible as well. The scale of it is phenomenal, and the miniatures are great, and the character is just ridiculous. So they've gone for this... what's her name from Daughters of Cain now? The snake lady that's
Marafi?
2 minis, but... Marafi, so they've gone for a very sort of similar thing, although, as I understand it, they don't occupy the same space at the same time. They're either one or the other, aren't
yes,
they?
yeah, because she transforms into the dragon, I believe.
Yeah. Well done, GW. Like, genuinely, I think they're going to sell a lot of this to people who are just looking to paint gorgeous centerpiece. This is a gorgeous army that is worthy of being purchased and owned just for for pure painting and creative expression, really. And obviously many people will go out of their way to purchase it, to put it on the tabletop. Just a really incredible kind of, as I say, statement of intent from GW towards the old world, and really reassuring that, the game's quite evidently here to stay. Obviously, assuming that this does well, which I hope it does, because it's phenomenal. Top marks.
No, it's
there.
true. There's a few things I want to say still. One of them is
Please.
quite interesting. They've done something, I don't want to say controversial, but it's the complete opposite of the current modern gaming philosophy. And that is, so the Sentinels, the big golems, depending on what colour you paint them, they have a different in-game effect. Whereas normally it's like, paint your Marines, whatever, just do whatever you want. Whereas they've specifically said, like, the Jade ones do the Jade things, and the Clay ones have a different bonus to the Jade ones.
But you probably could just paint them however you want and just say what it is.
Yes, I'm sure you could, but I admire the intention to, stick with the thematics and the lore of the setting for doing that.
Oh, I agree, and it's a great way of incentivizing people to buy 2.
Or 3, because there's 3 different colour choices that you can go for.
Is there? There's only 2 photographs.
I thought there was... hold on, I'm just trying to read it to see if it actually says... Because there was the clay, there was the jade... Oh, yeah, and the volatile warpstone. Terracotta, jade, and warpstone are the 3.
Oh. Well, there you go. Didn't know that.
Yeah, I think there was 3 in the video or the army shots that they showed you on the live stream.
Fair.
It's
was there? What was the other thing you wanted to talk about?
2 other things. One of them, and these are both tinfoil hat things.
I love that.
This is the replacement to Chaos Dwarves, basically. So you have to hear me out. What are things that Chaos Dwarves are known for? Gunpowder. Blunderbusses. Wizards. Sorcery on giant flying monsters. and this is from the Total War game, stone golems, because they have that. And what else do they have? Big giant mortars and rockets that can also have an optional ogre loader. All of those things are the core foundational things that this army also has.
Well, at the end of the day, mate, I probably can't argue with you. Which is nice, though, right? Because theoretically, obviously, they do have Chaos Dwarf rules at the moment. But theoretically, if you're already a Chaos Dwarf owner, it's a great proxy.
Oh, and also very heavily armed infantry, which is what these guys also have. Now, technically, these guys have cavalry. Chaos Dwarf do have bull centaurs, so that is a touch of a stretch. But it is, I think, for the broad strokes, very similar elements, and potentially maybe that's one of the reasons why they've gone, well, let's park those, because these are the new versions that do a very similar thing. And then the other tinfoil hat that I had is, because originally when Old World was announced, they talked about Kislev and Cafe, and the assumption was these were going to be like the starter box factions that was going to be released as part of the launch box. And then that obviously hasn't happened. And I sort of feel like that was a deliberate choice, because if they had started off with this army, they would have set the bar too high for themselves, that everything else would have just been a complete disappointment. Like, imagine going from this to going, oh yeah, dwarves, you've just got to buy all the old stuff. There's nothing new for you except, like, you know, one character.
Oh, totally agree with you. Like, I think they played it a blinder in that sense. I think that is a very, very good strategy, because, yeah, you're right. Had they launched with this, and
everyone would be playing Cafe, and none of the old. I mean, some of the old armies would have got some love. Some of the people would have dusted off their old armies. But personally, I think it's the best way to have gone about it. Let people collect or recollect their old armies, and then start introducing new stuff afterwards.
Well, it's fair to say that I think, like, Tomb Kings got a very powerful boost in popularity because of their association with the start of Old World. Knowing what I know now, would I have bought Tomb Kings? Maybe, but probably not, because I wasn't massively into Tomb Kings during 8th edition, though I like some of their miniatures, and I am glad that I now had the chance to get them, because I did lament the fact that they were removed from the game. But I think it was a combination of the emotion of, I've never really been able to get these. They've become quite mythic, you know, because they've been associated with
the end times, not going into the old world. So yeah, Bretonnia and Tomb Kings are the two that were, you know, done dirty by Games Workshop. So it felt like a good resetting of the balance, and a sort of a nice thing almost for the community to lead with them and give them new models and kits, and start off the game with them.
And in that sense, I mean, that is a demonstration of a team of people that are obviously very, very, very aware of what it is that they are selling, right? Like, they get it. They know who they're selling to and what the, you know, levers are they can pull. And what they did was they went, hey, we took these away from you and we haven't done Bretonnia. And if you remember 8th edition, Bretonnia were terrible because they were working with a 6th edition book or whatever it was. It's like, good news, Bretonnia are back, and not only are they back, but have you seen this geezer on a Pegasus? My God, he's ridiculous, you know, that flipping champion, slayer, whatever he is, geezer that's just like killing everything.
Oh, yeah. Well, it's the Green Knight plus the Lord on Pegasus.
Yeah, Lord on Pegasus, yeah. Utterly incredible. And then obviously on the Tomb King side of things, okay, fair enough, they gave us essentially a bone dragon, which was a cool kit, despite what the guy who created it says. And I quite like it. And they did give us a new like Lich Mini as well, which was cool. But, you know, the Tomb Kings were just inherently awesome. Like, they were a cool range. I'm really happy I own it. But, like, truthfully, would I have preferred to hold off to then maybe get my hands on one of the other ranges? Would I have preferred to maybe be doing Beastmen, or would I prefer to be doing High Elves? Maybe, but genuinely, I'm very happy with the way that it's worked out on the Tomb King side.
Here's the thing, you probably wouldn't enjoy painting Beastmen or any form of elves, whereas the The Tomb King's a lot easier.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Especially when you give them the Joe to do.
Well, that's one way of doing it, yeah.
Exactly. It's the easy methodology. But yeah, look, I mean, Old World-wise, I'm really excited to actually play some Old World this year. It's why I decided to do the commission thing with Joe, because I was like, you know what, I know myself, like I'm working on my Golden Ticket army, which we'll talk about in the outro for 40k. You and me have got doubles coming up in a couple of weeks, which I'm super excited about, and I'm really looking forward to that. I've got a bunch of Age of Sigmar projects I want to get over the finishing line. There's lots of things that I want to do, so I think, you know, outsourcing the Tomb Kings was the right shout, because I do really want to play it. It's just one of those things where I just was never going to find the time. But hopefully, Phil, you as someone with even less time, it seems, you should get around to painting all those Chaos Dwarfs so as we can play. Come on, Phil.
Yeah. No, come on. I plan to. I guess we can talk about that more in the outro when it comes to like a hobby chat.
Well, absolutely. Which we're going to get to. Well, maybe next. I don't know where this is going to appear in the running order, but we're going to go and record it now. So yeah, cheers for that. Thanks very much. We hope you enjoyed it. Transitional noise. Alright, it's the end of episode 201, although you know better than that. That's right, everybody, it's the outro where me and Phil have a general chit-chat. First thing I want to talk about, though, Phil, because we should do a kind of wrap-up on the overall performance of that particular set of reveals. Where would you rate it?
Oh,
what's how many fills out of 10?
Oh, how many fills? I'm glad you said this, because I had one criticism of it that I didn't get to voice at any other point. And that was that they kept asking for questions. And it reminded me 2018 Warhammer Fest, where they just didn't know the answers and were like, oh, just come back and check out Warhammer Community at some point. It's like, okay, right. Don't even bother to ask them if you don't know the answers to them. And then half of them were like, oh, when are we going to get Space Marines? And then like, just wait 5 minutes, guys. It's like that part of it was just dreadful and quite painful to get through. I mean,
it was like the guy who was actually like scanning the comments and asking the questions wasn't appropriately briefed either, because he seemed to ask questions that were pretty evident that they were never going to answer.
Oh, yeah. Or he said, oh, are the new cafe models plastic or resin? And they were like, yeah, we literally just said they're all plastic. So there's your answer. And it's like, okay.
Yeah. I mean, that's the thing with that, though. It's like, Games Workshop, obviously, especially the community team, have a very strict, seemingly set of guidelines on what they will and won't say. And ultimately, they just seem to be at the mercy of the actual Warhammer community website and how that all works. And it just always seems a bit of an odd one. So, like, I, as you say, Phil, the 2018 Warhammer Fest example is perfect, because that was so frustrating. It's like we all get in a nice space to talk about Warhammer 40,000 and we ask a bunch of questions and every answer was no, or why don't you go talk to the designers? They're next door.
Yes.
So, well, why are we here?
Yeah, it's like instead we got Stu Black, who didn't know any of the answers.
It was Stu Black and Dark Angels Adam, wasn't it?
Oh, yeah, I think so, yeah. Well, he was more sort of
neither of them,
yeah.
Yeah, neither of them had any answers. And I asked some good questions there, Phil. Good questions.
I'm sure you did.
Well, you were there. You should remember.
I have no memory of anything.
Oh, fine. Anyway, so...
In terms of how many fills do I give it, are we doing this out of 5 or out of 10? What do you want?
You set the fill scale, Phil. Tell me what it is.
I'm going to be quite... I'm going to say 7 fills out of 10.
7 fills out of 10?
Yes. Minus fills for lack of knowing any questions or answers to the questions. But, I think the cafe reveals and some of the others were genuinely jaw-droppingly amazing. I mean, some of the 40k stuff was a bit lackluster. But
yeah, but that's 40k when it comes to their miniatures right now. But the Space Wolves are cool.
The Space Wolves are really cool. I really enjoyed those. Some of the others are interesting, and I still can't stop thinking about those Thousand Suns robots. Even though I know they're bad and everyone says they're bad, but I really want to see more of them. And I want to see them painted up in a different way. I want to see how posable they are, if at all. Yeah, I don't know. There's something about them that I think is genuinely intriguing. And I don't think it's just a bad sculpt in the way like the ATV is. I think this is maybe just missing the mark in some way, and it's not doing it for what people want.
I think it's a bad sculpt like the ATV is, but we'll see. It depends on how much flexibility is within the kit in terms of how it comes to pose them. But obviously, looking at those miniatures, they're not going to be particularly difficult for you to chop up and repose. And I think that's the thing. Like, with a little bit of creativity, I'm sure people can get a lot more kind of dynamism and a lot more kind of expressiveness out of the figures and make them more compelling. And again, I will assert, or rather reference, that I was not a fan of the Castellan robot until I was. So it can turn around.
They can creep up on you. It might take a year, it might take several years, but they get you in the end.
Chthonian Berserkers, though, from the Leagues of Votan, are not ever getting me. That model is terrible, or that miniature, is terrible.
In my mind, they're one of the better ones. I think them and the generic squad are probably the better one. The generic squad's the best.
The generic squad has grown on me only because of the fact that when you actually see it in reality, you realise the scale of it and that they're actually quite squat, which is nice. But the Chthonian Berserk is terrible. Like, honestly awful. I think the exosuit ones, the geezers that have the big guns with the like, almost like, you know, like the Elysium style.
Yes, actual
not Elysium, Elysium. Yeah, exosuit things.
They're pretty good. They're pretty good.
Yeah, they look all right. I kind of gave them a pass, but
anyone with a Bane style trench coat, terrible.
Yeah, like Leagues of Votan are just ain't it, are they? It's a real shame. But yeah, like, I think that's the thing. Like, there have been minis that have definitely grown on me. Centurions, I've definitely weakened to, but I still think they're bad. I just kind of accept that they're bad. I'm just like, whatever. They're the worst Space Marine mini. Fine. Like, you know.
God, yeah. Are they the worst? I mean, it's to me, and this is a great YouTube tier list. It's probably for Space Marines between the ATV, the Centurions, and the guys with the missile tubes.
Oh yes, yeah.
Desolation Marines. They're the three that are up there.
The Desolation Squad has the benefit of still being modern intercessors, just with bad guns. So the intercessor kit is still cool, and there are some nice components in it that, if taken from that and put onto something else, is cool. But the problem is the guns are just so dumb that they take it down a level. But I think everything about the Centurion is pretty dumb. But you're right. I think probably the ATV is probably the worst Space Marine sculpt.
I think so. I've seen some really beautiful, what I thought were kit bashes of the Centurions, but I think they ended up just being 3D prints because they were like they changed the design too much, basically. But those are really nice.
The Centurion, look, I think that's the thing. Conceptually, it's not a bad idea, and you could definitely do a really good kit for Centurions. It's just, as they are, they're just bad. It's so weird. It was like what was that?
It's like
it's just, nothing about them makes sense.
It's Marines inside bigger armor, but not Terminators and not Dreadnoughts. And arguably, you could say the Tacticus, was it the Invicta Tactical Warsuit, is almost the more modern version of it, where it's like a Marine inside a bigger Marine, right? And that works as, I mean, even then, when that came out, that was quite criticised, I think, because it's like, it's a Dreadnought, but not a Dreadnought.
I'm trying to remember there was a Transformers toy range where it was like that, where they had like a little transformer inside of a bigger transformer. Anyway, it was just it looks stupid. It's but I've weakened to them because I accept what they are, and they represent a very particular time in Warhammer, the kind of strange midpoint between Primaris and the old stuff, where Games Workshop had a huge hot-selling range of Space Marines, and they were like, we need more Space Marines. So you can imagine the kind of pressure that people were under back then, where they're like, the company's not doing anything like what it does today, and they were like, give us another Space Marine unit, and some poor guy probably had like 3 weeks to come up with it and went, bigger Space Marines? I don't know. And it's like, yeah, sure, print it. Yeah,
I can see they basically, I can imagine they took the concept of the aliens, like the exosuit rig.
Well, it's got more of a Starship Trooper kind of vibe on that front, the exosuits or power armor from Starship Troopers, I'd say.
Oh, right, yeah, from like the novels and stuff. Yeah, probably. Like, yeah, Marines but bigger. But yeah, I just don't know. I mean, I think concept-wise now, it feels like you've got so many other sort of things that fill that role. But back then, I guess it was quite unique, but I just think the sculpts just they just were never good.
What I would say, though, as well, though, when it comes to a lot of these ranges these days, though, is I'd like to see them take risks like the Centurions. I think Centurions, in terms of an ideology, like the idea that they want to try and like do interesting things with the ranges, is not a bad idea. I just think it was just poorly executed. But I think that was just a product of timing and strains that were just sort of, you know, what they were. Because I find that a lot of the time, like I said this about the Emperor's Children release, I think Games Workshop have become actually quite formulaic in their range releases a lot of the time, especially with 40k, where it's like, here is the baseline unit, here is the bigger version, here is the other. It just becomes like it's very rare to see a kind of really creative idea come to the fore. Like a lot of the time, it's just here's the character, here's the other thing. It's like, yeah, I genuinely find that they're quite rigid in their structure right now. AOS as well, but less so in some regards. But I think even then with AOS, it's more to do with the final execution kind of elevates it, as opposed to the actual kind of design philosophy. It's always that thing with like AOS where you get the big centerpiece and then you get some other stuff, and it's always that kind of logic. You know, you look at the new Soulblight Gravelords release. What is it? Some cavalry, a bigger cavalry, as in a hero who's cavalry, and some, you know, some Barrow Guard foot troopers. And then because you need a big sexy mini, here's a big dragon. And it's like, okay, pretty by the numbers in that regard, but beautifully executed. So you don't hate it, you know?
No.
But weirdly in 40k, it starts to feel quite unimaginative. And that's the thing that starts to get a bit weird. It's like, why is it that every single codex just gets a single character? Bar, of course, obviously the things that triggered this conversation, which is the Tzeentch Thousand Sun robots. But like,
well, as you say, that was like, it might have been a swing and a miss, but at least it was a swing in terms of here's something new for that faction. I think online, the two main criticisms is A, the model doesn't look great. Okay. And then the other one
is totally
conceptually, it's not something new for them because they had robots in Heresy, but also what I saw today was quite a good point. It was basically like, it's an army of Marines that have become robotic because they've all turned to dust. So yes, I guess there's sort of synergy because it's like, it's an army of robots to a lesser extent, with a robot model, but it's also not deviating and not giving you anything new. It's just playing into the stereotype of that faction, I guess, which I guess you could say is good or bad, depending on your point of view in terms of what you want to see. But yeah, I sort of admire them that they did give us something completely new. They didn't just go for, like, I don't know, like a Thousand Suns Rhino or something, or a redo of the Terminators or something, which, you know, probably people would also like because they're quite an old range. Like they've had, I think since their initial launch, they've had like one character model that came out like a year or two ago, and like that's it. So it's been a long time for them to have new stuff.
And and I agree with that. I suppose, to that point, I think 100% it's cool that they tried. It's just, the devil's in the detail, isn't it, right? And I think ultimately it's good that Tzeentch or Thousand Suns got something other than just another character. But yeah. It's not the best.
But I guess also this is where, when we talked about it a bit before in the episode, like the heresy range is almost hamstringing 40k, because if that model had come out in complete isolation and there was no heresy to compare it to, sure, there'd be some criticism, but I think there'd be nowhere near as much, because it's now a recycled idea and it doesn't feel, for most people, it's as good as the original robots that they got in heresy. Whereas before, if there was no heresy as a model line, you would go, cool, wow, robots for thousands, and wow, that's cool. That's a new spin. That's a new take. Oh, and these are kind of cool models, or maybe they're not great, but there's no comparison to them, right? So in a way, as much as heresy is great for sort of creating, you know, interesting backstories, lore, you know, it's a whole game in and of itself. It is actually sort of hampering elements of 40k, but, you know, it's a classic case of, you know, there's these two like mini competing factions, and maybe they need to try and outdo each other a bit more.
Well, indeed. I mean, again, not to yet again reference that encounter with dear old Jez where he was complaining about that very same thing. But it was it's interesting. But yeah, look, I mean, for me overall, I felt like the reveals were very strong. I would rate it a point higher. I'd give it an 8. I think genuinely the Space Wolves and Cafe really kind of up the ante. I really like the Age of Sigmar announcers as well, even though I accept that they didn't give us new armies or whatever. But I'm genuinely really excited about the General's Handbook, and I think that's really cool.
No, that's true. And the 40k one as well, I think both were really interesting.
I think they really are going to start bringing some interesting ideas. I think they are potentially now, with the new design teams that reside within 40k and ultimately the kind of the old guard now, as I suppose they are, that have been, you know, innovating AOS for the last few years. I think they hopefully are at a point where they're going to do some interesting stuff and continue to deliver some fun, interesting gameplay concepts. Because to me, at the moment, I think the biggest problem with Age of Sigmar is the General's Handbook. I think the missions are too... I think all of the kind of things that they've done have created way too much rubber banding to the point that it isn't nearly as kind of compelling. I think the fact that it is actually arguably advisable to play from behind the whole game is a really weird thing, and ultimately kind of creates a very odd approach to the game. It just, AOS core rules wise is phenomenal and out of the gate has been really enjoyable, but I definitely feel like it's time for us to move on to a new set of missions and to be able to actually do more interesting, compelling things with those missions, because at the moment it feels very by the numbers, and I think it is making the game less attractive to other players, because I think people are convinced that it's the same thing every time, or that it's boring, which it isn't. It's one of the most entertaining gaming systems. The problem is that you have to kind of grasp some of its core systems and get over some of the foibles that create this sense of unfairness or negative fun, I suppose.
Yeah.
Because the reality is in the hands of a good player with a good grasp of the system, the double turn should never be as impactful to you as if you are a bad player, right? Like a good player playing against a bad player, the bad player will probably do things that the good player will be able to then exploit via the double turn to end the game very quickly. However, if you understand the mechanics of the game, you can navigate around that and create circumstances. Noting that I have, in very competitive games of Age of Sigmar, opted to give my opponent a double turn because it was more advantageous to me for them to double up than it was for me to maintain the priority and go first.
Yeah, I mean, in my examples, and these aren't necessarily high-end games, right? Although saying that,
well, neither are mine. I did
go 4-1 at one point, and
you did.
got to like the final, in air quotes, of a technically casual event. Anyway, yeah. So I've often
I really smashed that narrative event. I did well.
Well, it was there was a lot of tryhards on those last couple of games, especially my one.
As there always are.
But my point is everyone I play against tends to still play for the double turn, i.e. go second if they give a choice to double turn you as early as possible. So it feels like it is maybe still an issue within the game, but then maybe that's because, I'm playing with, lower to average players for a lot of the time, and maybe the high end players it's not as big a deal, or they know they still try and go for it to maximize that advantage as much as humanly possible. I think for me it's like there's two things I want to say. One is, unlike 40k actually has at least been doing some sort of narrative support via the Crusade books that have been coming out. AOS hasn't had anything. It's had...
That's not true.
The battle tomes, and within the battle tomes is the Path to Glories, but there hasn't been a separate campaign book or narrative.
That's not true. There has been.
What has there been?
There's a Path to Glory book right now.
Oh, God.
They released it.
You bought it. I didn't. That's why. But there's only been one of them, right?
There's only been one of them, yes.
There's only been one, and... Technically, for 40k, I want to say there's been 2 Crusade books so far, with a third one.
Yeah, but 40k is 2.5 years in. A new edition of 40k is out in a year.
Okay, maybe. My other point, moving on very swiftly, is that AOS has had a whole year, and it banged on.
It hasn't. It's had 9 months.
Okay. Moving on, no, it's had almost a whole year, and in that time, right at the beginning, they banged on about, it's a modular game system, we can plug in these new things and make it interesting. It's like, okay, cool. When you get to that anniversary, I want to see some of these modular rules coming into play that should technically be coming with this General's Handbook. Beyond what they're doing with endless spells, because endless spells are always in the General's Handbook. I want to see what they're actually going to do, if they're going to physically change the rules up in some interesting way, or if that was all internal marketing spiel, like I suspected all along. And it's, it's basically the same thing, but they've just worded it differently, and they've just, we've just numbered the sections.
I think, and that's the thing why I'm really excited to see. And again, I didn't mean to so kind of vehemently defend AOS's position. But it's that thing where, I think we will see that with the GHB. And I think it will potentially be a really great year for AOS if they get it right. I wasn't there for the whole of AOS 3. But it definitely felt like the year 2 GHB for AOS 3. In fact, no, they were still doing 6 monthly, but it was like, there was a period. Basically, the time
it was the second to last one, so it was the year 2. Would have been the year 2 one.
Yes, I can't remember what it was. It was about the something champions or whatever it was, and the idea is that you kind of like built up these heroes with extra bits and did all this stuff. And it seemed, the battle tactics seemed quite easy to achieve, but that created a good sense of, ability and so on and so forth. And it felt right. I genuinely felt like when they moved into the final battle tome of Third Ed, where they basically had all these flipping mad wizards everywhere, it started to get a little bit like crazy. I mean, that blizzard spell was wild.
Yes, yeah. I mean, it very rarely came off, but it was the boogeyman of the edition. And I think actually, talking about how the battle tactics were quite easy, what in a way was actually quite good about that is actually it doesn't dictate the game for you. It's like, cool, I've got something to do and I know I can do it, but ultimately I want to do some wider tactics and strategy within the game. Whereas now it often feels like I've got this tactic to do. It's really difficult. I'm going to have to spend all my resources and all my turn just trying to do that one thing. And maybe I'll do a couple of other things on the table. And that's the one thing I don't like about the current sort of 40k mission deck is it feels like the game is playing the game for me by telling me what I have to do and that I don't really have much agency with my models on the tabletop. That's sort of my only criticism of those things, because sometimes they're just sort of, and maybe that's my own fault because they're quite often Hail Mary levels of things you've got to achieve. And I'm like, well, I've got to do it. As opposed to just being like, oh, no, maybe I'm going to forfeit those points and try and do something else.
Fair. Yeah, I think that's fair. Yeah. But anyway, long story short, I'm really excited to see what happens to those two. And overall, I think for me, I think it's unreasonable to suggest that any of the reveal shows over the years haven't been 10 out of 10. I think there have been some. None of them come to mind straight away. But that didn't feel like every aspect of it was, utterly exceptional. I think the Space Wolves reveal was really special. And as a result, I think it deserves that kind of 8 out of 10 status. But I think, when you consider that really all it actually was Space Wolves, Cafe, which are, phenomenal. But ultimately, it was those two things. Age of Sigmar was very underrepresented, although did get a little bit of love for the Spearhead stuff. And then no Heresy, no Necromunda, no Blood Bowl, no Warcry. I don't even know if that's still a system they support.
Yeah, it is still going, but you're right. There was none of that. No Underworlds. To be fair, I sort of feel like all the specialist games have just been devoted to Cafe. If that's all they did with all of their entire team for 6 months to make that, I'm like, fair enough. They've done good.
Yeah, I agree with that statement as well. It is what it is. But, yeah. So anyway, there we go. Those were the reveals. Lovely, lovely. In the general sense, me and Phil are going to a doubles tournament at Warhammer World the weekend of the 12th and the 13th, I want to say. Saturday the 12th.
Yeah,
Sunday
sounds about right. Yeah.
So we're doubling up. We're taking the forces of the Custodes in the form of Phil's glorious Thunder Warriors. And I will be taking, now anyway, the Adeptus Mechanicus, because, unsurprisingly to no one, I wasn't able to paint the stuff that I aspired to do for our kind of original theme. Life and or things has been complicated. I, unfortunately, sadly, had another death in the family recently with my grandfather passing away, and that took up a bunch of my time. And, it's just one of those things. I just didn't fall into a groove where I wanted to be painting stuff, and, ultimately it got away from me. So, fortuitively, I've got a beautiful range of AdMech minis that big old Phil from RFW, old fingers on Instagram, painted, and I acquired from him years ago, which I think really beautifully matches what Phil, as in our Phil here, brings to the table. They've got the Mars-style bases. They've got that same kind of general vibe. So I think the two armies side by side will look really pretty. And will hopefully be positively received, because Phil's bringing crazy busted Custodes with all their crazy mad stuff that they have now. So yeah, my AdMech will just hopefully sweeten the pill somewhat for our opponents as they get to smash their way through my utterly pointless fleshy mechanical layers of Skitarii.
Fair, yeah. Because tomorrow I'm having a game with my buddy George, who's the guy I occasionally play with when he's back in town. And I was originally going to play Astra Militarum and practice that and try it out for when we do the Codex review. But then I was like, well, actually, I've got the Emperor's Lions detachment to try out, and that would be a good practice game for our doubles event. So, yeah, I'm going to give that a whirl and see what that detachment does.
Love that. Love that. Mate, I think it'll be a really fun weekend, though. I'm very excited to get out there and see how we perform. I think it'll be a fun old time. So I'm excited for that. It's going to be good to obviously hang out with Richie. Him and his buddy Spike are doubling up, and they're bringing a kind of retro-inspired Ultramarine Dark Angels combo where both the Lion and Bobby G are getting together to take on the enemies of the Imperium, complete with their Goblin Green bases. So that's going to be cool to see. So I'm excited to see how those guys get along. Maybe we'll even get the pleasure of playing them at some point, Phil.
Ooh, we might do. Yeah, well, probably Friday for sure, right? Doing a little test game.
Well, maybe I need to talk to you about my travel arrangements for that, because I've not taken the day off for it yet, and I don't really intend to, because I only get so many days off, and I've already taken loads. So
No.
I know, but we'll see how it goes. I might be able to blag it. I mean, at the end of the day, Warhammer World's open till
9,
late, so
10, something like that.
So we'll figure it out.
We can just wing it. We don't need any practice games together. That's the best way of doing a doubles.
Exactly.
You learn as the day
Practice
goes on.
Exactly. Practice games are for noobs, and that ain't us. We're seasoned pros. But yeah, so that should be good. Obviously, if you're around, come by, say hello. It'd be good to see you. But ultimately, we'll hopefully have some great opponents and a good time overall. It is a Throne of Skulls event at the end of the day, so it's all about the lulz, isn't it?
Yeah,
it's all about the fun.
It's all about the the favourite game votes and favourite army votes. That's ultimately determines the winner. So you can't get too hung up about winning your games.
No, absolutely. Although people do, it's fair to say,
for sure.
It is. It doesn't seem to matter what you say. The people there are definitely not thrilled when they lose, which is fair enough at the end of the day. But that's that. And then I've got a golden ticket event coming up in June at Warhammer World, and some other more indie things. There's RFW in May, so that should be cool. I think there's a chance that I might have to cancel that because of some other travel commitments that might be coming my way. But we'll see how we do. I'm hopeful that we can do it. I'm genuinely, Phil, at least the aspiration is there, as so often is the case. I'm genuinely looking at, for the Golden Ticket event, doing the 22 captain list.
Oh my gosh, that would be brilliant, because you told me about that last week. It sounds hilarious. For the listeners at home, explain what it is and maybe what it does.
Well, I don't really know what it does because I haven't played it yet. I assume that it will lose horribly most of the time, but it might surprise us. So it's 22 captains, and it's specifically Blood Angels, because Blood Angels have more captains than any other army. Thus, you have the ability to take 22 of them. It is effectively 3 captains, 3 Blood Angel captains, 3 Death Company captains, 3 Death Company captains with jump packs, 3 captains with jump packs, 3 Gravis captains, 3 Terminator captains, and 1 captain in Phobos armor. And I think that's all of it. I think that's the 22 captains. And then, at the moment, the current version of the list has 2 impulsors in it, but I'm probably going to switch that out for 1 repulsor.
No, surely is the Sanguinor not in it anymore?
I took him out because he's not a captain.
But neither's an impulsor or repulsor.
Yeah, but captains can have, their wagons, can't they? They can have transports. Why wouldn't a captain, have his pimp mobile?
But you can have more captains.
I can't, mate. Well, I could have. You're
not
so
maxed
you're right
out,
in the
surely.
centre. So I could have 2 more Phobos captains. Yes.
There you
go. But the problem with that is that they're just The problem is the focus cap is the same mini 3 times over, and it annoys me.
It's not easy to convert up or anything.
I mean, it's not horrifically difficult, I suppose.
Put it this way, what would be harder to paint? Another captain or an entire vehicle?
Well, I mean, it depends how good a job you do.
True. But in my mind, a whole vehicle was a completely different painting method to loads of infantry. And that was one of the reasons why I didn't take any Land Raiders in my Thunder Warriors list. Because as much as it's a big point sink for painting stuff up, it's just like I'd be painting it in a completely different style to the rest of my army.
Yeah, that's fair. I think it's being debated at the moment in terms of where the best sort of opportunity sits with the way that the army is and what it does. I think, at the end of the day, I'm going to a competitive Warhammer event, so I don't want to sort of not put stuff in the list that feels like it elevates it. But the main gimmick is obviously lots of captains, and it is a bit sort of like YOLO, who cares? And bear in mind as well, right? Like I intend to just gamble every game, as in like I'm going for the gambits all the time. I don't care about the primary objectives. I don't care about any of that stuff.
Okay.
I'm just basically going to run around trying to kill what I can and see what happens. But I'm always going for those gambits. That's the plan.
One question, and this is showing my willful ignorance of Blood Angels. Who's their chapter master?
Oh, Commander Dante. So I could put him in the list, yes.
Because that feels like a suitable captain.
Yeah, that's true. I could take Dante, and then I could take one Impulsor.
Or, I almost like the idea. What you should do: a golden Brutalis dreadnought to look like Captain Tycho.
Oh, there you go. This could be Token Tycho.
Exactly.
There he is.
Yeah,
maybe that's not a bad shout, actually. Yeah, so I get a little nod to him. That could be an option. I would definitely consider it. I think Brutalis has been in a couple of my lists. So basically, I've got like 6 different variables. I've got the Sky Hammer fortification.
Oh, right.
That's
you love a fortification.
Oh, mate, I think it's just funny. I think it's a really funny thing, and I just think it's hilarious, the idea that you take 22 captains and the Sky Hammer. I'm like, yeah, that's hilarious. Or not the Sky Hammer, whatever it's called. Hammerfall Bunker.
Yeah, Hammerfall Bunker, yeah. In a way, I mind that less than the Impulsors, because the Impulsor's like a unit, whereas that's just a fortification in my mind. So it's like a building.
Which is a unit.
It is technically a unit. Yeah. It feels more like it can fit in because it's like a non-unit, if that makes sense.
That's fair, but I think the Impulsor falls into the same category. I think vehicles are a transport vehicle is kind of okay. Because then, there's the Repulsor variant, there's the 2 Impulsor variant, there's one with a Storm Talon. That's one of the versions. Because the Storm Talon's just quite a fun sort of like flyer. I thought that was a giggle to put that in. There's an infantry version where I take a unit of infiltrators and I take a unit of Black Templars. I take a unit of Death Company on foot. That's a version that I like the least because
more
at that point it feels like it well, it also feels like it's deleted.
Right?
Yeah, so that's the one I like the least. Then there was the Brutalis as well, and that was one of the options in the mixture.
Yeah, of course. Also, Tycho, didn't he have a combi melter bolter?
He did. He had a combi melter bolter.
And what did Brutalis have?
Multi-melters.
Yeah, exactly. It's on
and technically, you can. I think now you can mix and match the kit, so you can give him the bolter arms. You can give him the bolter arms with the multi-melter nipples.
Bolter. Oh, yes, I think so. Yeah, because it's you could do you could have power fists with bolters, isn't it? Or the claws,
or the talons.
Yeah, I think so.
Maybe that's the way forwards. Maybe that's what I do.
I mean, also visually, a gold dreadnought would look cool.
It would look cool. Although the problem is he would have to be a Death Company dreadnought to do it right. Because he fell to the Death Company before he died.
I mean, even so, that's also cool, right? A Death Company dreadnought. Yeah.
And that's Tycho.
Yeah.
I mean, that would... hang on. How many points? I think the Death Company variant is more points, because I was looking... It's got legs, I can't lie. Right, here we are. So take that out. Take that out. And then let's have a look. Other detachment. Death Company Dreadnought. Death Company Dreadnought. What? Well, blow me down with a feather, as some people have said in time. 1,990 points with a Death Company Dreadnought.
Perfect.
Let me just check, though. What are the war gear options on this thing? Twin multi-melters, and so twin heavy bolters, and then Blood Fist bolt rifles and Blood Fist. Oh, God, it's... All right, done. You win, Phil.
Yes.
Spiritual Death Company Tycho makes the grade.
Brilliant.
Yeah, I love that, to be fair. That's actually a very cool, nice little narrative. I'll paint a nice Tycho on the things, and that'd be nice. Maybe I could get like the old Tycho model and have him projected off it in a kind of ethereal manner
as a little ghost.
Yeah, like one of the Star Wars holograms.
Yeah, well, didn't they do the Blood Angels captain, or was it Lieutenant Kit, that had a model that basically was Tycho?
Yeah, that's the Blood Angel captain. So I actually will have one of my captains, my Blood Angel captains, representing that loadout, because it is super cool. Although you can't actually give him Tycho's loadout because it's not an option. You can't even give him a bolter. So the Blood Angel captain is a really weird captain because its only option is a close combat weapon and a pistol. Basically, you can't give him a bolt rifle or any other kind of fun stuff. So there could be an option though to kit bash him with to do a Tycho representation that's actually just a generic captain rather than a Blood Angel captain, I suppose.
Yes, so you could use that model but give him the different loadout, I guess.
Yeah, because I could give him a bolt rifle and a power fist, which I guess would be closer, because then you could say the power fist is the dead man's hand or whatever that thing was called, because that was his melee weapon before he had a hand.
Yeah, nice.
And yeah. Anyway, yeah. So no, I think that's I think that's the way forwards, Phil. Thank you for being my muse, my inspiration. You're a good egg.
You are welcome.
Thank you, mate. There you go. So that's the list. That is what we're playing with. So 22 captains, and Tycho represented by Death Company Dreadnought.
Brilliant. And how long have you got to get it all done?
Oh, like 3 months.
Okay.
I've been kit bashing together other captains. This one is funny because he's it was from the old one of the earlier Combat Patrol mags, or even like earlier than that.
Oh, the Dark Imperium one?
The Dark Imperium one, yeah. So he's that janky blue plastic.
Right, yeah.
But I've given him the Power Fist and Bolt Rifle. So my regular captains are all Power Fist, Bolt Rifle, because it felt quite good. So yeah, be a nice combo. And then all of my Blood Angels captains are Inferno Pistol, Power Fist, nice. Obviously. Right. Yeah. Because I got to try and, yeah. One of the, I will say, one of the intrinsic benefits of the Impulsors as well, though, is that they had the comms arrays. And that gave me the opportunity for generating additional CP. So every time you use a stratagem when you're within range of the Impulsor on a 5+, you generally strat. And because they're all captains, most of them are doing strats for free. So it was good.
Well, what one's doing one free per?
Well, so you obviously, each one can do a different stratagem for free, basically. Or, negative 1 CP, but pretty much everything in the thing is going to be it's going to be 1 CP anyway, so it's like whatever. So you could have had multiple chances to try and farm additional CP for the captains that don't get it. So the Death Company captains do not benefit from that rule. They have different rules, but all the other captain variants do the CP thing. But anyway, yes, I'm excited to try it. I'm gonna take it mostly unpainted to a one day on the 19th of April, 19th of April,
right.
And see how it gets on. I'm going to continue to play with it and try and finesse it. I don't imagine that 22 captains and a Death Company Dreadnought is going to win the Golden Ticket event, but I think it'll be fun to try.
Well, definitely worthy. I mean, could you get it painted in time for RFW if you were able to go to that one?
The problem is yes, probably, but I wouldn't be able to take the list because it doesn't comply with the Highland rules.
Yeah, I forgot about that.
Yeah, so I think, unfortunately, I'm just going to probably have to accept defeat on that one because in my list of priorities, although to be fair, I've got like a Drakari army I can probably wangle into a Highlander, although probably not actually because there's quite a lot of repetition in that army. So, yeah, I don't know. I think in all probability, I'll probably just have to accept my limitations and say, sorry, Tom, can't do it, mate. But we'll see. I'm sure he'll be disappointed with me telling him that.
Well, I'll be disappointed with you as well because I'll be, so you'll be sorely missed.
Well, we'll see. I'll try not to go. There's a few things that could get in the way of it, but hopefully they don't, and I'll be there. But we'll see. Anyway, there you go. I reckon that'll probably do, unless there's anything you wanted to talk about particularly, Phil. I've sort of monopolised the time there with my chat about Golden Ticket.
Always the way. I mean, not a huge amount. I've not been able to do too much hobbying, but I'm looking forward to buying the Barrow Guard Soul Gravelords box when it comes out on the weekend. Well, on pre-order at least. That was it. I'm just looking forward to buying it if I can hopefully get hold of it because I'm worried it's
you'll be able to get hold of it.
A limited release.
It's Age of Sigmar, mate. You'll get hold of it.
I don't know.
Age of Sigmar never has the same kind of demand that.
I mean, you say that, but Tim's been eyeing up that box, and by the sounds of it, so was Richie. So it feels like everyone's after it. So.
Well, I mean, if the last 2 boxes are anything to go by, you could walk into any Games Workshop right now and pick up the Gloomspike Gits, Git Mob, and or the Emperor's Children. No trouble.
Yeah. Okay. Maybe it'd be fun.
But at the end of the day, don't rely on that as
ideally, I want to get slightly cheaper versions from Element Games, and they sometimes have very short supply. So I think I might maybe said it before, but I tried getting the what's it called, the something in Faith, the Kill Team box. From them. And I was 3 minutes late to the party, and they'd sold out already. Which either shows you how popular it was or that they just got such limited stock, or probably a combination of both.
I would say it's probably a combination of both, yeah. I think, again, you'll definitely be able to walk into a Games Workshop this Saturday and pick that up.
Yeah, but I didn't want to pay, was it 80 quid instead of 60?
Well, that's it, isn't it? That is the variable. I find that when I want the odd model, so like, for example, one of the kits I bought recently was the Lazarus kit, which admittedly is a poor example because it's direct order only, and as a result, it just has one price point now.
Right, that's true.
But sometimes when it's like one-off kits under 30 quid value, I always feel like, because of the level of saving that Element will give you on those kind of kits. So
yeah, because basically, you pay postage for them, whereas if you get it delivered to a Games Workshop store, or Warhammer store to be more correct, it's free, so you can, save a bit of money.
Yeah, and I just that's sort of been what it is, because I walked past a Warhammer store most days. So I'm just like,
Well,
it's
that's
super convenient.
Yeah.
Now.
Well, I mean, like I said, last time
exactly.
we went to Warhammer World, I picked up some of the Soulblight Gravelord stuff just because it was there, and I was like, I'd quite like it, so I'll just get it now. Yeah.
Yeah, sometimes that's the thing, isn't it? You know that, like, the frugal, sensible thing is to go online and buy it, but then, you know, it's not that I've had bad experiences with Element this year or last year. It's just that consistently you find that it's a weird thing, right? Like, because again, they deliver on, like, Saturdays, and it kind of wipes out your morning sometimes. Like, like when AOS...
Oh, well, if you wait around for the box to be delivered.
Yeah. Because when AOS 4 came out, like, I literally had to stay at home all day because I was waiting for it to arrive, and it's like... and you get no, like, tracking or anything, although you can probably pay extra for that, so I'm probably not being reasonable.
You can, but it's a lot. Probably like 7-8 quid, I think.
Yeah, so it just creates that frustration. Whereas if I go... Basically, what I'm asking myself sometimes is like, for the sake of a 20 quid saving or a 10 quid saving or a 2 quid saving, do I just want to be able to... Because, again, they're always like, when parcels get left outside my place, someone either nicks them or a fox eats them.
No.
That's basically what I'm up against. So it's... So yeah, I'm sort of like becoming more accustomed to just going, screw it, I'll just get it delivered to the Games Workshop or Warhammer store and pick it up on the walk home. It's just the added convenience, I suppose.
Fair, and then you've got it.
Yeah, that's it. Anyway, right, there we go. I reckon that's enough talking. Thank you, Phil. You're a delight as always. Good luck with your shed conversion. So for those who don't know, Phil is fixing up the shed for some reason because of Phil's I knew an old woman who lived in a shoe type lifestyle. You're unable to record remotely while the shed is in transition.
No, possibly, but it just has to be in a daytime. It can't be in the evenings.
Can't be in the evenings.
People need to go to bed, and I'm a very loud talker apparently when I'm podcasting. I use my podcasting voice, not my indoor quiet voice.
There it is. That's what you do. They're even probably hearing you from the shed now, being like, "Quiet, damn you!"
Exactly.
But yeah, so we might be doing the next couple of these in person. That is definitely on the cards. Or we'll be doing it during the daytime hours. One or the other. But, excited to see how the shed expansion works, Phil. It's going to be a bizarre but lovely thing for you to have a new space.
I know.
I'm excited for you.
I'll have some room to swing a cat around for a change.
And so you shall. It'll be a beautiful thing to witness, I'm sure. But anyway, yeah, guys, hope you enjoyed episode 201. We certainly did. It was pretty cool, in my opinion. But I'm looking forward to finally giving you my opinion on the Astra Militarum / Imperial Guard / Death Korps of Krieg / Catachan / Cadian / Attilan Rough Rider Codex. I think that was all the variables. There's no others in there.
No, I mean, technically there's Kazakin, but they're still Cadians.
Oh, yes, and there's also
Scions.
Tempestus Scions, flipping heck. But yeah, anyway, we look forward to hopefully being able to do that next episode. We got some hot takes and some interesting insights, I'm sure, on that one. Are we going to get Togon for it? Has that been decided, yes or no?
I guess it depends on when we're going to record, and we have to work it out.
That's fair. And if we're doing it in person, I suppose that'd be hard for him. We're going to Sweden.
Denmark, but yes.
Denmark, sorry, we always make that mistake, don't we? We're going to Denmark.
Well, you made that mistake, not me.
You made that mistake. We all make that mistake.
A worthy visit, for sure.
Exactly. At least I didn't say Swindon this time.
Fair.
Exactly. Goodbye, everybody.
Bye.
Bye now.
Bye. Bye.